Hello, do you like New Japan Pro Wrestling? Are you a Shin Nihon freak? If so, check out the Super J-Cast with Joel and Damon on the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network.
And even if you fucking hate New Japan Pro Wrestling, listen to the Super J-Cast anyway. Not just for our great show reviews, analysis, and pastrami sandwiches, but there's also usually some dick jokes somewhere in the obligatory opening 30 minutes of absolute nonsense we chat about every single week. That's the Super J-Cast for all the best talk about New Japan Pro Wrestling, crisps, and pornography.
Hey kids, do you like wrestling? Well, we like wrestling too. We are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Myself and Chris Novembrino kind of doing a lazy river of wrestling criticism, going through the news and whatever happened in stateside television wrestling. And also, you know what? Sometimes we just like to watch old stuff and talk about that too. Love for you to give us a listen. If you haven't already, we are Shake Them Ropes here on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
This podcast is a member of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network. Visit voicesofwrestling.com to hear the rest of our great podcasts, as well as show reviews, columns, opinions, and updates across the world of wrestling.
What do you guys want to talk about?
You are listening to the Flagship Podcast with your hosts, Joe Lanza.
What has being annoying stopped you ever?
That's an excellent point.
Right.
An excellent point. That's part of the charm.
Rich Crage.
Corey Graves screaming, perfectly legal, Cole. You can do anything you want in tribal combat. It's perfectly legal. While Paul Heyman is just yelling, tribal combat, tribal combat, tribal combat, tribal combat, tribal combat. I'm like, God damn it. Fuck all of you. Fuck this.
All right. And we are live here on the Flagship Podcast. I am Rich. He is Joe. Joe, what's happening? How are you?
Well,
got to do a show. What a day. What a week.
Yeah. Well, the last 24 hours, as you heard in the intro that Rich put together, that's 100% Rich, by the way. I had nothing to do with that. That was a great job. I listened to it earlier today. You know, hard not to hold back tears by the end of it, but arguably the greatest wrestler to ever live passed away at the age of 79. I guess it was yesterday. And there's actually been 4 wrestling deaths announced in the last 24 hours, the most recent of which is something we had no idea we'd be talking about today. As my phone goes off unprofessionally here. Let me turn that off. In the last hour or two before we went live, the news broke that Windham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt, passed away suddenly at the age of 36. I think this took most people by surprise. Now, it was an open secret that he had been ill, very ill, gravely ill, in fact, for a number of months, which is why he wasn't on television. I was told he was very ill and it wasn't a great situation, but that the family wanted it private, and at that point I just backed out and said, all right, well, I'm never talking about this ever. That's not my place.
Right.
Not on the dopey little show we do. But then he had made an apparent recovery.
Yeah, it was August 10th. I know that Sean Ross Sapp had reported that, things were looking good, and they were talking, and there were plans for something in September with him, and looked like things were at least on the mend, or at least, looking more positive than they were the months prior, where it was very hush-hush, very, this is tooth and nail, life and death type stuff going on.
He had recovered enough to the point where they had even begun discussing a potential return and kicking around ideas for a return. So from that standpoint, even people who were privy to his illness and how rough it had gotten were taken a bit back today, particularly with Triple H's statement that Mike Rotundo, his father, called him and called Triple H to let him know that Bray had died unexpectedly. So the news broke a few minutes before we hit the air that the family gave Sean Ross Sapp permission to make it public that Bray had contracted COVID at some point, which triggered or exacerbated an existing heart issue, and that was what shelved him. And then today he had a heart attack and died. So that's all we know. We do this show live on Thursday night. It is 7:52 Central on Thursday, and like I said, that latest bit from Sean Ross Sapp broke maybe 20 minutes before we hit the air here. So that's all we know. Windham Rotunda, 36 years old, passed away. He had 4 very young children, which makes it all the more worse. And of course, I don't know whether they were married or not, but he obviously, his girlfriend, partner, whatever term people prefer to use these days, was JoJo, and that's who he had his 4 children with. And I think I don't think any of them are even teenagers.
No, no, they're all very, very young. I don't know the ages children. Offhand, but no, very, very young.
Yeah, so that's there hasn't been much else in the way of details. I'm sure the more details will emerge as the days pass, but I'd say 36 years old. It's utterly ridiculous.
Yeah, that's how old I am. So don't love that number. I hate seeing that number. It's another thing where you're just like, shit, that's me. That's me unexpectedly passing away tomorrow. It sucks. You know what I mean? That's way too young, especially with 4 kids. That is the real tragedy of it all, is that those 4 kids. And I think I just looked it up. The first one was born in 2019. So yeah, we're talking very, very young kids. It's 2019.
Are you sure? I thought I saw.
Pretty sure. I mean, JoJo's she's not even 30 yet, I don't think. And he's 36. I mean, how old can these kids be?
Yeah, I don't know the age of his child. I thought he had one that was over 10, but either way.
He may have. You know what? I don't know if he maybe had from a prior relation. I don't know. We're just doing this thing on the air, so maybe that's the case.
Young kids. That's the point. Let's leave it at that. He's got some young kids, and
they're from his ex-wife. So he had 2 kids with an ex-wife before, but I don't know. I don't know how old those kids are, but the ones with JoJo are 2019. Regardless,
got you. So 4 kids total, and all very young. So, that's that, and and as we said, over the last 24 hours, I mean, just brutal. The Terry Funk news, and we'll get to Terry Funk in a minute. Abe Jacobs, who was who was believed to be the world's oldest living wrestler when he passed away at the age of 95.
Right, I saw Mooneyham had that fact that he believes, and I would trust. I don't know if I trust him on the Gambler passing away. I guess that wasn't his fault, the Gambler passing away. But he's an encyclopedia of wrestling history. So if that's what he said or he had done the research on it, hard to.
Mike Mooneyham, you mean?
Mike Mooneyham. Yeah. I believe he was the one that said he's the oldest living wrestler, and I would have to assume that he's a wrestling encyclopedia. Like I said, he's a knowledge of the histories of wrestling. So I'd imagine that probably is indeed true. And man was really old.
Not only that, but Mike Mooneyham's area of expertise is the Mid-Atlantic area.
Right.
And he was also personal friends with Abe Jacobs.
Right.
So, with the whole Gambler thing, it was just a different guy who wrestled as the Gambler. He wasn't even wrong about that. It was just a different man who had passed away. Who had, again, wrestled in that area. But so Abe Jacobs, who was believed to be the world's oldest living wrestler at the age of 95, he was a Mid-Atlantic mainstay. That's where I think most people... Now, I mean, there aren't a lot of people who probably have vivid memories of Abe Jacobs matches. I mean, he peaked in the early 1960s. So, I don't know that I've seen much of Abe Jacobs. I know that someone on our Discord actually had a tremendous find. They found a tag match with Terry Funk and Abe Jacobs.
Whoa. Wow, I didn't see that.
So actually, I'm going to pull that up right now.
It also speaks to Terry Funk's longevity, which we're going to get to in a little bit. That match should even be possible.
Yeah, for sure. So, I could find this relatively quickly here. You know what? Of course I can't now. But there's, I'm sure if you go, it was off of YouTube. So just type Terry Funk and Abe Jacobs into YouTube, and there's actually a tag match, which is I'm guessing is from the Mid-Atlantic area, which involved Terry Funk and Abe Jacobs. And then, believe it or not, there was a fourth wrestling-related death announced in the last 24 hours. Rich Landrum, who, again, would be best known. He was the host of Worldwide Wrestling in the late 70s. Again, this would be the Mid-Atlantic area as well. The Worldwide Wrestling, which was, one of Jim Crockett's television show, that eventually morphed into WCW Worldwide.
Right.
Through its various incarnations eventually. And Rich Landrum was a wrestling announcer on that show in the late 70s, maybe even into the early 80s. Let me pull up I
believe he was there until, in doing my research before the show, somewhere in there between 82 or 83, yeah, is when he left. So,
yeah, according to Mike Sempervive, who does a history podcast on Mid-Atlantic.
Which is great, by the way. If you ever listen to that show, it's really, really good.
Yeah, I have, and I think he's the one who actually broke the news. If it wasn't Mike, it's where I saw it first anyway. But yeah, so Rich Landrum passes away as well. So 4 wrestling related deaths, including the most shocking of which was the 36-year-old Windham Rotunda, who I'm sure we'll have more on next week. But just it's always a shock when it comes unexpected and it's someone that young. But I don't know. I guess we were planning on doing a career retrospective of Terry Funk, and we're still going to do that. But obviously, it would have been an enormous omission to not talk about the 3 other people who passed away in this wild. Well, I think, Jacobs died on the 21st, and Landrum, I think, may have died a few weeks ago too, but it wasn't made public until today. But the point here is, within the last 24 hours, we've had these 4 wrestling-related deaths, and when it comes to Terry Funk, I mean, you're talking about, as I said at the top, there are plenty of people who would tell you that he is the greatest wrestler to ever live, and whether you agree with that or not, I don't think many people would argue with that very hard, because there's certainly a case to be made that Terry Funk is, in fact, the greatest pro wrestler to ever live. And when you think about, it's funny because when you think about Terry Funk, it's entirely possible that you take 10 fans and they'd all think of 10 different eras of Terry Funk. Whether it's teaming with his brother Dory in All Japan in the late 70s, and really from the early 70s through the mid to late 80s, as just beloved foreigners, which was absurd. I mean, normally the Gaijins were heels, especially in those days. But they would battle the heels when they would go to Japan. They were baby faces. Yeah. And, there's that era of Terry Funk. There's when he was the NWA World Champion from, I believe, late 1975 to early 1977. And, Dave Meltzer, who was close personal friends with Terry Funk and knew him as well as anyone, as he noted, the only reason that Terry Funk NWA World Title run ended is because it broke up his marriage to his lifelong, literal childhood sweetheart, who he then eventually married. But the rigors of defending the NWA World Title, which in those days you had to travel literally all over the world, was a hellish schedule. His wife left him, and to win his wife back, he gave up the NWA World Title, lost it to Harley Race, and they reconciled. And I don't know if they had divorced and remarried or just reconciled or whatever the case was.
Yeah, not sure, but together. Still together till she passed away. 2016, right? She passed away.
Whatever year it was, recently though.
Or it was 2016, 2018, somewhere in that range. It was very, very recent though.
And they remained together, until her death. And if that's not romantic, I don't know what is.
That's it. Yeah, I read that line and I was like, man, the things, little sacrifices that I have to do on a given day, that you have to do on a given day, that anybody listening to has to do on a given day to their partner or whatever, this man has to give up the top prize in his industry, profession. The pinnacle of the industry, the pinnacle of your profession. Give that up to win her back is man, if that doesn't
win his wife back,
if that doesn't, that's incredible, right? Like that's what an incredible story. You can make a movie out of that. That's awesome.
And and he never got another crack at that title.
I was gonna say that was it, right? I was just scrolling right now just to make sure that I was indeed true. Yeah, one time only, 400 plus days with the title, and then that was it, one and done.
He defeated Jack Briscoe for that title in 1975, and the story behind that match was Funk was the heel. It was supposed to be, the storyline was it was supposed to be Jack Briscoe versus Dory Funk Jr. And Terry replaced Dory in the match at the last minute. And he won the match when Jack Briscoe went for a figure 4 leg lock and Terry rolled him up in a small package. Terry wins the NWA World title, and Jack Briscoe, I remember him telling Gordon Soley, I made one mistake, and that's all it took to lose my title. And, and he didn't make any excuses about facing Terry instead of Dory. But when Briscoe told Terry Funk, you're going to have to defend this title in 1 week right back here in Florida against Jack Briscoe. And Terry, I remember Terry was like, you mean Amarillo? And Soley was like, no, the match is going to take place right here in Florida. Gordon Soley.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, it's in the contract.
It's going to happen right here. Championship Wrestling from Florida and Tampa.
You didn't read the contract, Terry, because you replaced your brother Dory. There was a clause in the contract that if Jack Briscoe were to lose, he would get another crack at the title right here in Florida. And then Terry, is, all irate. And then it's great because then Soley goes, and to be fair, Terry, at one point the referee was injured during the match, and it was very clear that you were pinned for at least 5 full seconds. and Terry Funk turns to him and totally deadpans. He goes, I don't recall that. just classic.
That's great wrestling, man.
Pro wrestling. I don't recall that, Gordon Soley.
We were having a discussion about that in I forget if it was Discord or Slack, the Voice of Wrestling Discord, but we were talking about old school heels, and the Briscoes actually came up on the flip side of that when they did their heel turn in Mid Atlantic all those years later. And I just said, I remarked that, like, and we've talked about this before. I think we talked about it when Jack Briscoe passed away. Or no, we talked about it, sorry, not when he passed away, when we doing Hall of Fame audio about the Briscoes. And I went back and watched a ton of old Briscoe stuff, and especially that heel turn. And it had that classic thing like you're talking about, and just classic pro wrestling where the guys would they'd just lie to they'd lie through their teeth, and that was fine. Like, or they didn't lie. They just kind of went, "Oh, I don't remember." Like just there was a famous scene where they were beating up Ricky Steamboat, I believe, the Briscoes, and I think it was Bob Caudle who was doing the interviews, obviously with Mid Atlantic.
It was Bob Caudle.
Yeah, Bob Caudle's like, well, we can clearly see from the footage that you're attacking Ricky Steamboat. And he's like, oh, no, he tripped and I was helping him up. And Caudle's like, Brad, Jack, what are you talking about? And it's like they're like beating on him. And Jack's like, no, see here, he fell and we were just trying to, get him up onto his feet again. And they're just like beating him or whatever. And Bob Caudle's just apoplectic about this. He's like, what are you talking about, Jack? Like, we're watching the footage. You're clearly beating this guy up. But that's
Jerry, we can see you.
Right. But I love that classic bit of pro wrestling evil where it's like, no, it didn't happen. Yeah, no. What are you talking about? No. It's like that's what heels used to be. Now they're everyone's trying to be Heath Ledger Joker and be evil and I'm so evil and cunning and. Back in the day, it was just like, nah, I didn't lose. They're like, yeah, we saw you lose. Yeah, no, I didn't.
Yeah, just the total little assholes. Just assholes.
And the heat is that everybody knows that these guys are lying. The announcers know they're lying. You know what I mean? The interviewers know they're lying. Everybody in the audience knows they're lying. Everybody watching at home knows they're lying, but they're just like, oh, no. You know, that's the heat. That's the heat, and that's good heat, man. I'll take that heat over, oh my God, look how evil I am. I'm just manipulating all these people, and I'm so evil. It's like, I'll take this over that. But Terry's the master of that too.
Yeah, so total deadpan response to Solely. And,
right. I don't recall.
And that's such a good angle to do, like to get the title off of Jack Briscoe, who, you know, that was his second reign, I believe. And, but really, you know, he dropped it to like Giant Baba for a couple days. So really, Jack Briscoe had, you know, effectively, he'd been the champion since probably 1973. And, you know, who knows? I mean, in some of these territories, they may not have even recognized the Baba, you know, title, the quickie title switch, but technically it was his second title reign, and Funk ended it. But it was such a good angle to where it's like to give him an out, right? Oh, it was supposed to be Dory. And then, you know, he puts the claws in. But anyway, he didn't lose it back to Jack Briscoe. Jack Briscoe never won the title again. And Funk held it for over a year before, as we said, he wanted to put his marriage back together. So he gave up the title, and he lost it to Harley Race. And Harley Race went on to have that monster title run.
926 days. I remember that number off the top of my head. 926 days.
And again, if you really want to get technical about it, I mean, he had quickie changes. You know, the first Dusty title win in 79 was only a couple days. Harley Race wins it right back. Then he trades it with Giant Baba in Japan, and he wins it right back. He loses it to Tommy Rich in that, you know, infamous title change, and Tommy Rich holds it for 3 or 4 days, and Harley Race wins it right back before he finally loses it to Dusty Rhodes again in 1981, and then that was the start of the Dusty Rhodes Ric Flair era of the title. You know, Harley would win it, one more time officially, you know, in 83. And then, of course, if you want to count the New Zealand change with Flair. But the point is, when Race beat Terry Funk, it really kicked off, like you say, 926 days. But in reality, that was a years-long run where he just dominated the title and really had only lost it for a few days here or there.
Right. But, he had the 926. Officially, he had the if you want to actually officially the first one was 926. I'm going on Cage Match now to get all the others. So he wins it on, like you said, in 1977 over Funk, then holds it for 926 days, loses it to Dusty Rhodes, gets it back 5 days later, starts a 66-day run, loses it to Giant Baba, who has it for 7 days. Then he starts another 302-day run. Then he loses it to Baba again for 5 days. Then starts a 230-day run.
Oh, it's so like, he did two quickie changes with Baba.
He did, yes. He did one in 79 and one in 80. Yeah, so I always remember that first one, but I always forget that he followed that up by winning the title and keeping it for another year and a half.
I remember Baba had the quickie one. Baba had the quickie one with Jack Briscoe too. So Baba had 3 total reigns that probably didn't even come out to 20 days. You know, probably a week apiece. He would
just as long as the guy was in Japan, they could lose it on the way out. Yeah,
right.
When's your flight home? Cool. All right. Well, now here you go. Here's the title back. Bye.
Yeah. So as for Terry, I mean, that was it for him as NWA World Champion. As we said, he would never win that title again. But as we said, obviously he started in the mid to late 60s, Amarillo, his father's territory. There's very scant footage of that territory, period. I know for Match of the Week, I found a Dory Funk senior match, and I believe that's one of the only Dory Funk senior matches. There's very few of him that even exist on tape, especially from that era. And then by the early 70s, by 1972, Terry was already linked up with Baba and doing the All Japan tours by 72. And then, of course, he formed a legendary tag team with his brother and battled all of those teams. I had just watched the day before he died I want to say the 1978 Real World Tag League final against Baba and Saruta, which was a dreadfully boring match. I mean, not exactly a glowing
yeah, no, it doesn't sound.
But he had his moments. there was a great spot early in the match where, because Funk had a rivalry with Jumbo Tsuruta, which I think most people are probably familiar with. There was a point where Baba tags in, Giant Baba, and he comes in, and they like lock up, and Baba just physically dominant. And Terry wants no part of this, and he just he turns around and tags Dory. But before they switch out, he turns back to Baba, and he puts one hand behind his back and puts out the other hand and just gives him a quick handshake and gets the hell out of there, basically saying, I want no part of you. My brother's going to handle this. I'll get in there when Jumbo's in there. Me and you are done. We're finished for the night. You're too much for me. You're 7 feet tall. You're a freak of nature. No thanks. But that's Terry Funk. He was just so there's all those little moments. I saw Dylan Hales put out a funny tweet. He said that, and I had completely forgotten about this, but there was a match in ECW where Terry lifts up a toolbox to whack somebody with a toolbox. But while it's over his head, the toolbox opened up and all the tools came tumbling out.
I hope he took a bump.
Fucking wrenches and screwdrivers and shit. And he sold the fucking tools falling out. Like I'm probably he's those wobbly Terry legs. And I had completely forgotten about that. But there's just so much of that with Terry, and a lot of those 70s tags in All Japan. Look, like I said, the one the one I just watched with Baba and Tsuruta, I believe it's 78. Me personally, I don't think that, how I feel about Dory though. Dory Funk Jr. to me is one of the most boring wrestlers of all time. I don't get Dory. I don't like Dory. And you're talking, the 1970s All Japan style here. But as their run moved along, they would have these wild tag matches with some of the more wild heels that would come into All Japan. And those are some of the greatest and most classic tag team matches of all time, and they were just so popular, the Funks, with the fans in Japan. And, they were going to Japan pre-1972, before New Japan and All Japan. Back in the JWA days, Terry Funk and Dory Funk were going to Japan. Back when Inoki and Baba were a tag team, Terry and Dory were having matches against those, in the early 70s.
Right. That's people don't know that JWA was the pretty much the only like major, Japanese wrestling company. And then what happened is due to, a bunch of differences and we're going to push this guy over this guy or whatever. They both left. They both basically said, fuck it. We're going to
Inoki and Baba.
Yeah. We're both going to leave Inoki and Baba and
they formed their own companies.
New Japan and All Japan. So yeah, JWA was, the.
And the Funks, extremely loyal to Giant Baba, so they went and Baba then took on Jumbo Tsuruta as his tag partner, and they had all those matches with the Funks, and Terry had his rivalry with Jumbo, and and back in the United States, I guess around that time is when he would have started his years-long on and off rivalry with Dusty Rhodes, and the iconic Dusty Sucks Eggs t-shirt. And, they had their wars in Florida and Georgia, and
great promos between you can just imagine, but yeah, going back today, I was watching, there's a great playlist on YouTube that's just like Terry Funk's best promos. And I just hit play on that. And that's where a lot of the stuff in the clips of the intro came, is I was just watching all these and I'm like, I could just make an intro. I'm just going to hit record, and the ones I like, I'm just going to save and do. And, yeah, you just go, and I think it was like 2 hours long of just him cutting promos, and a bunch of them are those ones in Dusty and with Dusty. And as you can absolutely imagine, it's Terry Funk and it's Dusty Rhodes, so it's just absolutely incredible. And I think this is the point where, because I watched a bunch of stuff, I watched some of the Terry Funk promos he did when he was with Dory or whatever, and I think this time period is when you really start getting the Terry Funk that I think most people are kind of familiar with. I guess the Terry Funk that probably put himself on the map as being like not only a great wrestler, just a tremendous wrestler, but one of the best characters, one of the best promos, one of the best all-around guys in the business. Was around this period, watching these promos, this is when he gets it. He figures it out and he clicks, and he's just a different animal from the rest of the 80s to the 90s till ever. And then I think this is the period when the Terry Funk that I remember, the Terry Funk that I know, really started coming into form.
Yeah. Yeah, it's and the Dusty Rhodes feud is, I mean, it's hard to say what his most, because again, he wrestled so long in so many places. The Dusty feud would be up there, but there's the Lawler stuff in Memphis, in that same era in the early 80s. There's obviously, Ric Flair, in 1989, Cactus Jack in the mid 90s. As I said, Jumbo,
the Raven,
the Funks versus the Funks versus the Briscoes, the Funks versus Jumbo and Baba, the Funks versus all those All Japan tag teams from that era. So you have a lot of different places to turn if you're talking about great Terry Funk feuds. Funk and Race. I mean, Terry Funk and Harley Race. I mean, they had a match in Houston in 1977, which is considered an all-time great NWA world title match. It's almost impossible. And then, again, and then by the late 70s and into the 80s, when you had people like, Abdul the Butcher and people like that coming into All Japan, they would have those matches, I think, would probably hold up better for some of our listeners who aren't into maybe the slower style, because some of those Gaijin heels who came into All Japan really took Dory Funk out of his comfort zone, and he had to work a different style of match. Terry could do everything, and did and showed that throughout his career. But you see a different side of Dory Funk Jr. when they're wrestling like the Sheik and Abdullah the Butcher.
Yeah, I watched one of those matches earlier today, and it was a wild match, as you can imagine, where and Abdullah just stabbing Terry in the arm, and Terry's arm is just gushing blood. I'm like, Jesus Christ, what is going on here? And the crowd's just electric. And yeah, you said Dory's got a little more juice and a little bit more energy in him. He can't go in there and grapple and kind of work. He's got to fight a little bit, and he could do it. He could. He just like you said, he needed those guys to kind of take him out of his comfort zone a little bit. And I like those matches a lot. I think I'd rather watch an Abdullah, which seems mind blowing, that I'd rather watch an Abdullah the Butcher and the Sheik versus the Funks match than Jumbo and Baba. But it's just this, like you said, it holds up a little bit better with 2023 eyes, where I'm like, all right, sometimes those Funks through to Baba matches, you got to settle in for 35 to 40 minutes of very methodical, whereas this is like bell ring chaos. They're stabbing each other, blood everywhere. It's got a different atmosphere, a different vibe about it. And yeah, definitely it holds up. It does actually hold up pretty good.
And then in between all those great All Japan tours and real world tag leagues, which they won 3 times. They won it in 77, 79, and 82. In 78, they had the 45-minute draw with Baba and Saruta. That's a match I just watched. And then Baba and Saruta ended up winning it by 1 point. And I don't remember who won. Let me look up real quick who won in 80 and 81. 80 and 81. 80 was Baba and Saruta again. The Funks finished tied for second. And 81 was Brody and Snuka, with Baba and Saruta and Funk and the Funks finishing tied 1 point behind with 11 points. And they actually had another 45-minute draw, which gave the tag league to Brody and Snuka, because neither team was able to. Well, let me take a look, because let's do some real-world tag league math. So Baba and Saruta
from 30 years, almost 40 at this point, years ago. Yeah.
Well, they had a double count out with Brody and Snuka.
Okay.
Terry and Dory lost to Brody and Snuka. I don't know what the tiebreakers were back then, but it looks like Brody and Snuka were going to win that thing no matter what. But Baba was just avoiding any bullshit, and he had Baba.
With Brody. He was like, whatever, so man, fine.
They just went to a draw, and Brody and Snuka won it. But then in 82, it was the Funks winning their third and final tag league. And, in between, like I said, the stuff with Dusty, the stuff with Jerry Lawler. And then in 1983, Terry actually had his first retirement, which was after the tag match with Hanson and Gordy. And that's the now famous and maybe the greatest wrestling promo of all time, the Forever.
Yep.
And which you actually had in the intro. And that's that whole promo, and that match too is accessible, but that whole, post-match promo is accessible. People should go watch that if they have never seen it before. He's got the blood covering his face. And
yeah, blood and tears. Yeah, it's sweat, blood, and tears just covering his face as the crowd is just...
when you talk about crowd connection,
yeah.
It's just those people, they quite literally love the man. They love him. And, I don't know how much of what he's doing is work and how much of what he's doing is shoot. Who cares? It's just a great emotional scene, the likes of which it's so rare, and I don't know if it's even possible anymore. It's just an incredible all-time scene. And of course, his retirement lasted about 6 months, and he retired 19 times.
Yeah, it's terrifying. So. Strap in. There's going to be a lot of, and then he retired, but then he came back. Yeah,
some of them, I guess, some of them were, probably just to, I can make some money coming back. Some of them may have been legitimate. I don't know the ins and outs. Meltzer will probably have better details on that sort of thing, but it wasn't long. He was back by 84 and, traveling right back to Japan in between working the various territories in the United States. Even when he came into the WWF in 85, he was still going back to Japan. Like, that was part of the deal. He was insanely loyal to Baba, and part of his deal was he was still going to make those All Japan tours when he was with the WWF. And when he went to the WWF, he was almost immediately programmed with Hogan. He was WWF-ized to an extent. They basically just made him a heel, over-the-top cowboy.
Yeah, he was a cowboy outlaw. Like, yeah, he
wore
was...
the chaps,
right.
And hat, and it was 80s WWF, so everybody, you either, everyone had a gimmick in that, you were either draping a snake on your opponent after you beat them, or you were stuffing a $100 bill down their mouth, or you were bringing a fucking macaw or a fucking whatever kind of bird Coco had to the ring, or Matilda was chasing you around, or you were getting your hair cut by Brutus Beefcake.
Right, whatever
Terry
you were,
Funk,
it was up to 1,000. Whatever that may be, you had to be.
And you had a gimmick.
Yeah.
And you had the post-match gimmick.
Tugboat was a literal boat. Earthquake was literally an earthquake. Yeah, it was.
And so Terry had the branding iron. That was his gimmick.
Right.
And he would beat the jobbers, and then he would brand them on their ass or the back of their thigh. It was like a fucking ink stamp or whatever, but the commentators were, he's got that branding iron, and he's and he would brand his opponents.
Right, on the promos. Put that thing away, you're going to put an eye out or whatever,
and he was mad by Jimmy Hart, so you had, the branding iron served well as a heel gimmick, too, as a, to help cheat or whatever. But, he went right into a feud with Hulk Hogan. And the thing with the Hogan Funk matches where, we talked about Dory getting taken out of his comfort zone with those wild, bloody brawls in All Japan. This was Hogan getting taken out of his comfort zone because these matches with Funk, when Funk came to the WWF and was working that heel gimmick, he worked like a fucking wild man. And you go watch some of those Hogan matches. The Saturday night's main event match is probably the most famous one. But there's also a match from Philly. Is it Philly or Boston? I think it's Philly. Which again, it's just it's a fucking any of them that you could find. I mean, they're all just absolute riots. And Hogan has to work that wild, brawling, what would come to be known really as hardcore style with, wrapping the ring announcers fucking microphone cord around their necks and getting thrown out of the ring. And they were not the formula Hogan matches of the day where it was a big giant wrestler, whether it was Big John Studd or King Kong Bundy or Kamala or Sika, or, you go right down the line, beat Hogan down for 6 or 7 minutes. Hogan does the Hulk up and the no sell, hits the big boot and the leg drop. We all go home in 11 minutes. Like that. Those were not what these Funk matches. Funk really took him out of his comfort zone and had some of Hogan's best matches, probably Hogan's best matches of that 85, 86 sort of era. But the run didn't last long. And, he famously in his book, and by the way, I'm surprised at how many people don't realize he wrote a book, because I encountered a lot of
I'm not sure that I knew until a couple years ago about it. So
I have a funny story about that book. I have a friend who ran into Raven at the Borgata Casino in Atlantic City.
Of course. Perfect.
Probably in this had to be 20 years ago, 2000, maybe even longer. Maybe when the Borgata, I guess, was built in the early 2000s.
You're asking the wrong guy. You're asking the wrong guy about Atlantic City
I'm
Hotel
talking out loud.
lore. Okay.
Oh,
I see. Okay.
Probably 2000, 2001. It's probably about 20 years ago. So my friend runs into Raven in the poker room of the Borgata Casino. And he recognizes him. So they have, he says, hey, you're Raven, whatever. And at the end of the conversation, Raven goes to my friend. He goes, hey, have you ever read Terry Funk's book? My friend goes, nah, as a matter of fact, I haven't. Goes into his back pocket, pulls out the book.
Excuse me?
Yeah. Hands it to my friend and goes, here you go. It's great. It'll change your life, and then he just walks away. He took Terry Funk's book out of his back pocket. Hands it to my friend.
Was he still reading it? Like, is he... I have so many questions. I have so many questions that I need answers to.
He hands him the book, and he just walks away, and they part ways, and he never sees him again. So he got Raven's copy of Terry Funk's book, which is fucking bizarre. But and he just Raven was like, I guess maybe he had just finished reading it. And he's like, oh,
that has to be like he brought it to the casino, or he was at the pool. He was posted up at the pool earlier. I don't know if the hotel has a pool. I'd imagine this place has a pool, right? And he finished it and said, well, I guess
this guy's a fan. Maybe he'd appreciate it.
But why would I put it in my back pocket, though? I'm trying to think of, in my situation, if I had just finished a book, I don't think the back pocket is where the book goes. I think I would. Was he reading it on the floor of the poker room between games?
Maybe he was waiting for a game. And
then he finished it, put it down, and said, all right, well, back pocket it goes. And then the next guy walked up to him and said, hey, I'm a wrestling fan. He went, good. I don't want to take this home. So, maybe your friend was doing him a favor. He was like, I was going to throw this out anyway. Here you go. So many questions.
So,
it's incredible.
Yeah. And I was looking for my copy, and I can't. I don't know what happened to mine. I was, because, I was like, I'm going to reread this, and I can't fucking find it. So I think I let someone borrow it, and I never got it back. Which is depressing, but where was I at? Oh, yeah, so in Terry Funk's book, he tells the story of how he gave notice to Vince. He left Vince a handwritten note that said, Vince, my horse is sick. I think it's going to die. And that was it. And he left the WWF. And as legend goes, when he came back for the Chainsaw Charlie run in 1998, the first thing Vince said to him was, how's your horse? So I don't know if that's true or not. I hope it's true, because that's extremely funny.
It's a great bit by Vince too there too. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like to hold that, he probably was annoyed as hell that the guy quit on him, but then he let time heal all wounds or whatever, but knew I'm gonna ask him about that fucking horse. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The second he sees him, how's the horse, pal?
I back then
totally
it wasn't.
buy it. Why would Terry Funk lie about that? Right?
Well, worker's worker.
I think, but I don't know. I could see that's a very Vince thing to do. Oh, hey, Terry, how's the horse? You know what I mean? Like, I could see it.
Vince saying that.
You could absolutely see him walking up in his little suit or whatever. Terry, how's the horse? Like, all right, see you later, pal. Slaps him on the back and moves on.
Because the match at WrestleMania 2, which was Terry and Hoss Funk, which of course was Dory Funk.
I gotta call him Hoss.
Well, yeah, in total Vince fashion, he felt that Dory wasn't a tough sounding name. So they changed his name to Hoss. Dory, it's a sissy name, Dory. We're going to call you Hoss. And then they had Jimmy Jack Funk, which was Jesse Barr, which was, part of the Barr family from Portland. So they gave them a third brother, Jimmy Jack Funk, who actually, he was essentially, I think he replaced one of them when, I don't know if Terry and Dory left at the same time, and they may have either, I can't remember the lineage of the fake Funk brother, but he either replaced one that left or was the pin eater for the two when they were there. I can't quite remember, but Jimmy Jack Funk, Jesse Barr, he stayed on with the WWF almost until the 90s doing that gimmick. Now he was a TV enhancement guy. He never really got pushed, but he was one of those respected jobbers, that would get a little offense in, but ultimately lose. But yeah, WrestleMania 2 match with Terry and Haas. They beat Junkyard Dog and Tito Santana, which actually is a pretty decent match for that era of WWF. That was pretty much it for Terry. He didn't wrestle, I think he probably saw the writing on the wall. He had finished up the program with Hogan. He had his match because the Saturday night's main event match, that was the end of the house show loop, and that's what they would do in those days. Once they were through with the house show loop, Hogan would then blow off the feud on TV with his opponent on Saturday night's main event. Once there was no more money to be made, once they did the whole loop. And I guess when Funk saw himself booked with Junkyard Dog, he's like, it's only going to go downhill from here. I already worked with Hogan, and I'm in a mid-card match at WrestleMania. It's probably time to move on. So he left, and of course, was still going back to All Japan. And, and that, I guess, brings us to 89, right?
Yeah, well, we should briefly touch on, I don't know if we gave it enough time, the Lawler feud in Memphis.
Sure, go ahead.
What, 80, 82, I believe it all kind of kicked
81,
off.
82,
yeah, I guess, I forget exactly. Yeah. The major part of it, I guess it started 81, and then some of the major parts of it, going on through 82, but 81 probably the bulk of it. But obviously a very, very, very memorable run with Jerry Lawler. Of course, the most famous is April 81. So I guess, most of it was 81. April 81, the empty arena match with Terry Funk and Jerry Lawler. And I watched that earlier today as well. And that's something to behold. I mean, there's been a lot of other, empty arena matches and attempts at an empty arena match, but nothing, man. I mean, this is the way that these guys did it at this time in Memphis with Lance Russell and just, the professionalism of a Lance Russell and him constantly reminding everybody, well, just so you know, there's only a cameraman and a photographer here. It's just us three. There's no one else here. And there's, we're not even sure if we're going to show this footage. I don't even know if this is going to make air. Am I even plugged in? Like he's selling the chaos as well. He's, grabbing his mic cable and trying to figure out, he's talking to the cameraman. Hey, do we know are we sure these guys are even showing up, or what are we even doing here? I don't even know if this is going to make air. What do we, he sort of does a really, really great job of selling. Lance Russell does a really great job of selling sort of the weirdness of this all and just saying, I can't believe it's come to this. I can't believe that these two guys can't settle it in the ring, and this is what they need to do. And the clock is like they agreed to get there at 1 p.m. On this day at when the Mid-South Coliseum, when it was going to be empty. And Lance Russell points out, it's 1:03 and no one's here, and I don't know why I'm still here. We should just leave. This isn't going to happen. And all of a sudden, here comes Terry Funk, and Terry Funk's spitting mad and all upset, and he's like, where's Lawler, and Lance is like, I don't know where he is. He's like, maybe he's caught in traffic, and Terry's like, oh, you're out of your mind. He's like going at Lance Russell's like, don't put your hands on me. It's great stuff. And then Lawler walks in, and he's dressed up in all the best part about it, Terry Funk comes for a fight. Terry Funk's ready for a fight. Jerry Lawler walks in, robe, crown, he's all the way decked out, and Terry Funk's just like, get a load of this weird ass pig sucking idiot, or what the heck is he doing with this stupid crown on his head or whatever. It's good. It's just great stuff. And then they brawl, and it's a very fun brawl. And again, Lance Russell does a great job of selling it. They sell the chaos. That there's only one cameraman, so the one camera guy's got to follow him around the entire time. Again, you can do this in today's wrestling. If they try to do this in today's wrestling, there'd be 16 cameras. Everybody would be perfectly mic'd. Michael Cole would be there screaming the whole time. There'd be, the barricade would blow up. We know exactly what it would be like. You know what I mean? But the simplicity of Lance Russell with a wired microphone walking around with a cameraman and a photographer, and that was it. And it doesn't sound good, it doesn't look good, but that's the point. It shouldn't sound good, it shouldn't look good. These two idiots can't settle it in the ring, so they have to go into this empty arena and fight each other to the death, so then they do the match, and the very famous angle in that match is Terry Funk gets out a 2x4. He's about to go hit Jerry Lawler with it. Lawler turns the tables, grabs the broken 2x4, stabs Terry Funk in the eye with it, and the match stops when, or I think he hits him. Sorry, Funk had it in his hand, and then Lawler kicked him. Now I remember. Sorry about that. Yeah, he kicked Funk's elbow. Funk then put it, the broken 2x4, into his eye, so it wasn't Jerry Lawler doing it, because he's a babyface. A babyface wouldn't stuff something in some guy's eye. We got to think about this logically. He kicked him, and it just so happened that it kicked into Funk's eye or whatever. And then it ends with Terry Funk screaming, "Oh, my eye!" Terry in the perfect Terry Funk voice. Yeah. Hey, I can't believe he did that. My eye, I can't see. Mother of God, sweet Mother of God, my eye. It's just like screaming. And Lance is like, have we had enough already, Terry? Come on, look at what it's come to. Look at what it's come to. He's admonishing him, Lance Russell, and Jerry Jerry Lawler's just like, he asked for it. He leaves the ring. He doesn't really care or whatever. But, so then it's set up, Terry Funk walking around with an eye patch or whatever, getting even more deranged, getting even more nuts about it. But that's obviously the most famous angle there in Memphis with Lawler and Funk. And, yeah, that's just some great stuff. Great, incredible promos. And, yeah, it's a back and forth of Jerry Lawler and Terry Funk. And those guys, they've been able to do that match. I think they've done it, countless times. I think they just did it like 7 or 8 years ago. They did it somewhere. I mean, they could bring that out for anything in Memphis ever and draw a house for that thing, whether it be a pro wrestling night at a Memphis Grizzlies game or whatever it was. If you put Terry Funk and Jerry Lawler in there, people were going to know that meant that was a big deal in Memphis. And yeah, great. The empty arena match is very easy to find if you want, and the promos are very easy to find. But yeah, that's a great run there that he has in Memphis.
When he left WWF too, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up his run in Puerto Rico, which I did a match of the week, I don't know, maybe a year or two ago, in where they were doing the WWC Universal title was vacant, and they were doing a tournament, and Funk was in that tournament, and I did the Barry Windham match as the match of the week, and that was a tremendous match. And then he wins that, and he cuts an all-time promo on Rick Martel, who's his next opponent in the tournament, and then he faces Martel and he beats him. It's another good match, and then he does the job to Carlos Colon in the final, and loses to Colon. But I almost forgot about that little Puerto Rico run he did after he left the WWF in the spring of '86, which is that's just more Terry at his best. And then I guess he was working another retirement for a while, right around '88.
Yeah, he was doing his Hollywood stuff at this point. He was really trying to say, I'm going to get out of wrestling. I'm going to go act. I'm going to be in the movies and stuff. And honestly, he got a lot of pretty big roles. He had a lot of work. It's Terry Funk. It's not that hard to get work. The guy can clearly, he has an aura about him. He looks like a guy that'll beat the fuck out of you. So he was great as, tough man, I think at one point, he's in Roadhouse, I forget his character's name or whatever.
Roadhouse,
but he's just like guy that kicks someone's ass, and that makes sense. It's Terry Funk, and then they talk to him, and he's like, "Get the hell out of here!" And it's just like, well, you can buy it because it's Terry Funk, man. It's perfect. But yeah, he got a lot of run. There's that year, a couple of years there where he was doing a pretty good amount with Roadhouse, obviously being the top one. I think a couple TV spots as well. But then he comes back to wrestle in probably might be my favorite angle of all time. We've talked about this on the show before, but
the flare angle,
adore the flare angle.
Well, hold that thought, because first he comes back because Dusty at that time was trying to get Florida going again with the PWF thing, the Professional Wrestling.
Of course. Oh, right. Yeah.
And he brought Funk in to main event their big shows, the Homecoming and the Homecoming 2, and the main events of those shows were Dusty Rhodes versus Terry Funk, trying to revive. Actually, now that I'm checking this, they headlined Homecoming 2, the Homecoming, the first Homecoming show, which was in March. As I frantically pull up Cage Match, was Dusty Rhodes versus Big Steel Man, which was the aforementioned tugboat. And Funk was on the undercard wrestling a very young Dustin Rhodes. And then when they did the Homecoming 2 a couple months later, they went with Dusty Rhodes versus Terry Funk on top. But it didn't draw a good house, and the PWF, the final nail in the PWF coffin was when Dusty went to the WWF, when Vince came calling. They kept it going for a little while. Steve Kern kept it going.
But yeah, the company built around Dusty Rhodes in Florida without Dusty, not going to.
Which wasn't working to begin with.
Right, which was not successful to begin with, doing the old regional territory style in an era where it was way, way, way past expiration date on that. And then you lose the top guy. Yeah, it's not going to go well.
And like a lot of them during that era, they tried to give it a more national name, like Continental tried it by changing their name to Continental. They tried to go Professional Wrestling Federation, but they couldn't get the tapes really out of Florida, and it just didn't work. So Dusty threw in the towel. He went to WWF. But Funk popped up in WCW in '89 as an announcer. And this was what you were about to bring up, and I'm going to let you tell people. The lead up to that was the famous Flair Steamboat feud. So the Flair Steamboat matches play out, and Flair, of course, wins the final match. And was Funk an announcer or a judge for that?
He was a judge. He was a judge.
Go
in that
ahead.
match.
You take it from here.
So Wrestle War 89 is the match, and it's Ric Flair versus Ricky Steamboat, and they had one of the judges for the main event if it went to a time limit draw or whatever. I think that was the or something. I forget exactly what the purposes of the judges were for that particular night. I believe if it went to a time limit draw, they needed the judges to declare who was the winner or whatever. So Flair defeats Ricky Steamboat, and then after the match, Flair's celebrating in the ring. And Funk, who's one of the judges, walks into the ring and goes, I'd like a title shot, Rick, if you have the chance. And Rick's just like, all right, yeah, I know you've been spending some time in Hollywood and, you're not really wrestling anymore, but yeah, maybe. Yeah, we'll see.
The great line was, Terry, I got a list of top 10 contenders I got to get through, and then maybe if you can earn a spot on that top 10. He kept bringing up the top 10.
Right. He's like, well, we got the top 10. I got a lot of work to do to, I got people that want to challenge me first, but hey, you know what? Someday, pal. Yeah. As he kind of taps him on the shoulder, goes, someday, old man, essentially saying you're old, you're in Hollywood, you're not really focusing on wrestling. There's a lot of other better wrestlers. Yeah, you're not a top 10 contender. Get on that list and then maybe we can talk. And Funk's just like, Rick, I'd really love a shot at the title. And Flair's just like continuing. This goes on for so long and like in a good way too, where Flair's just like, Terry, I love you, Terry. I know you but the contenders, I got people, you're in Hollywood, it's okay, man. And then one more time, Terry's just like, I told you I want a title shot if you don't give me a title shot. And then this is when it happens. He attacks Ric Flair, goes nuts, beats him up, pile drives him onto a table, which at the time, it might not seem, when I'm saying that sentence to you, you might say, oh yeah, okay, that's an episode of Monday Night Raw. No, I assure you at this time, it was not done by every single wrestler on every single indie show, on every single main. I mean, it was a shocking thing. He pile drives him onto this table. The table doesn't budge at all. Flair goes, tumbling down. Jim Ross is apoplectic. The crowd is going nuts. People can't believe that, oh my God, what is he doing? This guy just attacked Ric Flair. And the way that they sold it is that Ric Flair went away. He didn't wrestle for months until then, and the idea was that Flair might not be able to wrestle. So then they would interview Terry Funk in the meantime and go like, what the hell's wrong with you? Why did you, and then he would say, well, I wanted the title shot. And he didn't give it to me, and he doesn't think that I'm a good wrestler. And I'm one of the best wrestlers of all time, and I'm going to prove it. And they keep saying, well, you took him out. Like, Flair can't wrestle. He might not wrestle ever again. He might have to retire. And finally, Ric Flair does come back at the Great American Bash. I believe, I think it was the Great American Bash. Yeah, the Bash that came back, and they have the first match there. That's not the one that I think everybody remembers. Flair does win that match. It's a very good match. It's Flair winning by reversing a small package into a small package of his own or whatever, which was another great finish, like you said. But then the big one, I think that everybody remembers, and if you don't, you should go out of your way at some point.
The Bash match, before you get to the I Quit, the Bash match also led to the extended feud with the Great Muta and Sting and
right.
So there were more layers added at that point to kind of stretch it. But on the house shows, it was Flair and Funk on every house show. Right. I mean, they were trying to squeeze everything. But anyway,
and doing good business for WCW in a company that was not doing good business at this time. Like
because
what
a lot of people don't realize is the famed and tremendous Ric Flair, Ricky Steamboat saga was a bomb at the box office. That feud did not draw at all. For whatever reason, a lot of people think it's because Steamboat was the babyface and was presented as this family man. He was bringing his baby to the ring and his wife and all that. And Flair was doing the Flair routine. And some people think that the dynamic was all off. And Flair came off as like this cool, globe-trotting guy who's fucking all these women. And Steamboat came off as this nerd.
Nerd with a family.
Bringing his baby to the ring. Yeah.
Right.
So the psychology was all messed up for the time, and it just that didn't draw. And then they did the Funk, and look, it didn't do gangbuster business, but business was definitely better than what it was for the Flair Steamboat feud. So anyway, go ahead and tell people about the I Quit.
Yeah, so Clash of Champions 9, they have an I Quit match. It's a 5-star from Meltzer. I think it's on Cage Match. I believe it is still rated as the best Terry Funk match of all time, and it's phenomenal. Go out of your way if you've not seen this match. Clash of Champions 9. It's on the Peacock. I'm sure you can find it in numerous other ways if you want. You have to go. Must watch this week. Must watch this week. And of course, Funk does lose. He says he quits after Flair puts him in the figure 4, and just. Great stuff. Yeah, just an incredible match. And just the atmosphere around it, the work. It's two of the all-time greats going out there. And two guys that are, and Meltzer wrote about this in his write-up about Terry Funk, is that he would say that he would go to shows with Terry Funk in the 80s and the 90s or whatever, and Funk would be sticking his head out during the pre-show. And Dave would say, what are you doing, Terry? And he goes, I got to see what the atmosphere of the crowd is. And it's like he would dictate how he was going to work that day based off what he thought the crowd was going to like. And he would do that by watching the pre-show, watching some of the openers and going, okay, the crowd's into this. The crowd's into this. Okay, they like this today. They want this today. And not just saying, well, we have to go do our match. You know what I mean? Dude, who can do that these days? Who in today's wrestling is Seth freaking Rollins poking his head out and going, this Terre Haute crowd is really going to want me to do this instead of this? No, he's going to do his match and his thing, and he doesn't matter if it's in front of Terre Haute or Poughkeepsie. He doesn't give a shit. It's the same match, the same thing, no matter what, when he walks in that building. He does not care. But Terry Funk, even in the days when he could have went out there and just done the most basic Terry Funk whatever, you know what I mean? Like whatever, he could have just walked out there and said, I'm Terry Funk, and done a few basic moves or whatever, and been as over as he would stick his head out there and try to see what does the crowd want today? What is this crowd like that the other crowd might not like? And what do and dictate his matches on that way. And that's why that Flair Funk match is just two legendary guys going in there, and you know that they didn't talk about this match before. You know that they called this all in the ring. I'm sure they had a couple of ideas here and there, but for the most part, it's just two guys, two legends, two all-time greats going out there and just having just one of the more phenomenal matches you can ever see. Yeah, go anyway. Clash of Champions 9, I Quit match. I think that is, if there is one must-watch that I'm going to give you, it's this match. And if you've seen it, go watch it again. But if you've never seen it, make it a note this week to definitely go out and see that match.
Yeah, the whole feud, really. I mean, and you know, I'm just looking at some of the house shows. You know, they had a match in the Omni in Atlanta that drew 15,500 fans, which was an enormous number in any era for any promotion. That's an enormous number for 1989, WCW. But, they did that Flair Funk match basically in every city, and it did draw big. Looking at some of the, Baltimore Arena, they did 4,600 fans, but that Omni show, which was to be fair, here you go, Chicago UIC Pavilion, 3,600 fans. So you can kind of see what the other business looked like around that time. So to do almost 16,000 fans in the Omni was really a monster house. Greensboro, there's no attendance for that one, but you get the idea. Let's see if Philly has an attendance. No, nothing for Philly. But the Omni, which was a Texas death match on top of everything else, Ric Flair and Terry Funk. Some of the other stuff on the card, Great Muta versus Sting. That was the TV title change. So again, this is a big card. The match that went on last was the Road Warriors versus the Samoan SWAT team. You had Luger defending the U.S. title against Tommy Rich. You had the Freebirds versus the Midnight Express. Skyscrapers, in this case, Spivey and Vicious, against the Steiner brothers, and then some undercard stuff. But just to give you an idea what was going on during that place and time, and that was probably the biggest house show. I can't imagine they drew better than that on any of these other shows. Here's another Omni show. A few months later, an I Quit match. Unfortunately, there's no attendance listed for that one. So we can't see what they did for the return business. But I mean, that whole feud, there's the angle where Funk puts the plastic bag over Ric Flair's head, which was very controversial at the time. Very controversial at the time. And that was after a tag team match. I think it was Sting and Flair against Muta and Dick Slater. That was Clash of Champions something. And Funk comes out and he puts the plastic bag over Flair's head, and they do the I Quit match, which is the blow off, and then Gary Hart turns on Funk.
Yeah.
Then that's the end of it.
Yeah, and then he does mostly I think then he's kind of, his work is kind of done. Then he's doing the what the hell was the interview show called? Funk's Grill. Funk's Grill. That's right. Yeah, which was not. No, it wasn't. It was fine because it was Terry Funk with an interview, and Terry Funk talking, but I don't want Terry Funk interviewing wrestlers. I want Terry Funk being interviewed. So it didn't, and it didn't last long. I think he was gone a couple months later.
I went right back to All Japan with Dory.
Hell yeah, he did. Yeah, make some money, man.
Yeah, they worked some of those tag leagues, into the early 90s. I mean, people think of early 90s All Japan. I mean, the Funks worked the 91. No, they worked the 90. They worked the 90 tag league, which is, the beginning of that. That's that era, the late 80s, early 90s that people think of. So some of the teams they worked in 90, which was obviously drastically different than the teams they were working in the 70s. Just some of the names: Dan Spivey and Stan Hansen, Johnny Ace and Kenta Kobashi, Misawa and Kawada. So they went even into that era, after he had his retirement in 88 and did the Flair feud in 89. They went back. They worked Dynamite Kid and Johnny Smith on that tour. They worked Steve Williams and Terry Gordy. So they worked the Miracle Violence Connect. They worked Andre and Baba were a team that year in that tag. Oh my God! You don't know how bad some of those matches are.
God,
so
we're talking 1990 Andre the Giant.
1990 Andre and Baba.
And 1990 Baba. Oh. Dear God.
Yeah, they were winning matches. They scored a ton of points in that tag.
Well, yeah, who's going to pin them? You can't pin those guys. Come on.
So, and then they even went back for some tours in 91. They didn't work the tag league, but, they were there when, there's a Funks versus Can-Am Express match out there somewhere from 91. They worked the Southern Rockers, Rich. They worked Well Done in All Japan. They worked Rex King and Steve Dahl. So, it's... So that, and then that was kind of it for the Funks in All Japan in the early 90s there. And that's when Funk started working the Tri-State in Philadelphia, when they were running all of those, the early version of indie super shows is basically what those were. Little plug for Jovember to Remember. We talk about Tri-State in some of the early episodes of that, but Funk was a mainstay of that. They did more Funk Lawler matches on some of those Tri-State shows, and those Tri-State shows were just the loaded indie shows of the era. Here's a random one: Winter Challenge 2 from 91, which had the Funk Lawler main event. You look what else was on there. Of course, there's some local Philly guys, but you had Abdullah the Butcher versus the Sheik, Cactus Jack versus Eddie Gilbert, Ivan Koloff versus Manny Fernandez. And then the local guys, Tony Stetson, all the early ECW guys, Tony Stetson versus Johnny Hotbody, JT Smith versus DC Drake, and people like that. But those Tri-State shows were always loaded, and Funk was one of the frequent big stars that they would book for those, which would come in handy a couple years later in 93, when Funk was one of the early top stars of ECW. And Funk and Eddie Gilbert were feuding all over the United States, whether it was in Philadelphia, whether it was in Texas, whether it was in Minnesota. Those Terry Funk, Eddie Gilbert matches in the early 90s, that was kind of like the traveling big time indie main event match that was happening all over the country that could reliably draw, 2,000-3,000 fans to a show if promoted properly. And at that point, Funk ends up Funk and Eddie Gilbert, they work a match at the ECW joint show with at the Battle of the Belt show, where they did the I Quit Texas Death Match, which was ECW and the name of that other the WWA, ECW WWA co-promotion at the Radisson Hotel, the infamous show where they booked Kerry Von Erich as a surprise, and they put a mask on Kerry because they wanted him to come out and reveal himself as a surprise. But then Kerry wore his ring robe that said Kerry on the back.
That's the most Kerry Von Erich thing ever. This fucking bag of marbles here. It's like, all right, here we go. It's like to Kerry.
And they took the mask off and still tried to sell it.
Oh my God, it's Kerry Von Erich.
Right. So that's the
show. Most Kerry Von Erich story ever. Yeah, God.
Yeah, so that's the same show where Funk worked Gilbert in the I Quit Texas Death, and that's where Eddie Gilbert met Todd Gordon and where they formed their relationship, and where Todd Gordon met Terry Funk, and then from there, both of those guys come into ECW. Eddie Gilbert is the booker, and the first big feud, that Eddie Gilbert booked the promotion around, was Eddie Gilbert and Terry Funk, which at that point was kind of wearing down because they had done it in so many places, and they had even done it in Philadelphia multiple times at that point. But that's what Gilbert went with to start, which was probably a good choice, being the two biggest names and all that, with Gilbert as the heel and Funk as the babyface. And, at that point, that's when Funk started going back to Japan, but no longer with All Japan. He started doing more of this is when, death match and garbage wrestling and the hardcore stuff was beginning to become en vogue. So he did link up with FMW around this time when he would go back to Japan. He had that run in WCW in '94 where he was part of the Stud Stable with Bunkhouse Buck and Arn Anderson and
Ming, I think, was
Robert Fuller was Robert Fuller was Colonel Rob Parker, and Bunkhouse Buck, of course, was Jimmy Golden, both longtime Southeastern guys, and Funk was part of that, and they had that feud with Dustin Rhodes and Dustin and Dusty and all that. So he had
that awesome Dusty promo, one of the great promos in wrestling history. Dusty, calling on Dustin to come team with him, stuff. Yeah, great work.
Yeah, and you know what really kicked off that run was when they booked Terry Funk and Tully Blanchard at Slamboree to have a Legends match. You remember that?
Right. Oh yeah. Because they would do Slamboree as the Legends night in '93, '94, and then I think '95, and then they got rid of it. But yeah, it was like Legends night, and they would have old guys wrestle, and it was like, look at these old guys wrestle, and those were two of the guys, which was a little unfortunate at that time. It was Terry Funk and Tully Blanchard, and
they ended up tearing the house down.
Yeah, absolutely, best match of the night. Yeah.
And basically, Funk, it got him a bunch of months more work because they kept him around, and he did the Stud Stable thing, and it's funny because then, by 95, we're talking prime ECW, and we'll get into that in a second, and also the deathmatch stuff in Japan. But this is really what people associate with the middle-aged and crazy era of Terry Funk, right? But the thing about it is, if you go back and watch the old WWF matches, he's already billing himself as middle-aged and crazy in 1985.
Right.
This is 10 years later. So it's like he was born in 44. So in 1985, he was already 41 years old when he got to the WWF in 85 for his first run with Vince McMahon, and was already billing himself as middle-aged and crazy. And then he was kind of still, but by the time he got to ECW, he wasn't really doing the cowboy shtick. It wasn't as heavy-handed anymore. Now he was adjusting with the times, and he was, and that's the one thing about Terry Funk. I think the only person on par with him in terms of constantly reinventing yourself and adjusting with the times would be Chris Jericho.
Yeah.
Very similar in that way, to where, Funk wasn't stubborn. You go watch a Terry Funk match from 1972, and then a Terry Funk match from, 1985, and then a Terry Funk match from 1989, and a Terry Funk match from 1995. And, you go right down the line, and it's like a different wrestler, because he was doing what was going to get over, and he was adjusting with the times and working the style of the time and trying to stay ahead. In early ECW, in 95, 96 ECW, Terry Funk started doing moonsaults. Terry Funk started working with weapons. Why? Because that's what was over in 1995 in Philadelphia, and that's what was over in 1995 in Japan. Hot moves, weapons, bloodbaths. So he was just doing what worked and staying relevant. And, he's 50 years old at this point, but he was so instrumental. And anyone will tell you that was associated with early ECW. I mean, without Terry Funk, maybe the whole thing doesn't work. They needed him for credibility.
Right. Yeah. Paul Heyman famously, everybody knows from Beyond the Mats or whatever, before Barely Legal. doing that speech in front of the entire ECW locker room and making sure to make a point that and thank you to Terry Funk. We would not be here today without you, Terry Funk, for legitimizing us, putting us on the map, and being everything that you've done for us and for the professional wrestling business. So thank you, Terry Funk. You know what I mean? As he's doing this pre-show, we're going live, we're going on pay-per-view. This is what we've all built for, but let me take a few moments to let everybody know the only fucking reason we're here is because of Terry Funk. That he, more than almost anybody else, is why we're here right now. And it's true. It's 100% true.
They needed Funk during that era because Heyman was building new stars, but he was taking these East Coast, Island of Misfit toys, the Tasmaniac doing, which was, pre-Taz, where he was just like this unhinged guy who didn't speak any English and he wore a furry singlet. And, eventually they turned him into Taz, the human suplex machine. But, Tommy Dreamer, this white meat suspenders wearing babyface who was, working, Savoldi's IWCCW, and, the Sandman who, when Heyman inherited him from Eddie Gilbert, was still doing his surfer gimmick.
He was literally the Sandman.
Yeah. And Heyman needed time to convert these guys to turn them into something marketable, to something that would connect with the fans. And, he took somebody like the Sandman whose real life personality was, he was a South Philadelphia guy. He smoked, he drank, he watched sports. He loved sports. He loved tits. He loved smoking. He loved getting drunk. And Heyman was like, well, why are we doing this surfer thing? Number one,
be you.
It isn't you. And number two, everyone in the crowd's going to relate to you if you're just one of them. I mean, right. Sandman would come straight from the construction site
with his beer belly and his stained white shirt and a cigarette,
and his Zubaz and his fucking and so but it takes time to get these people over. Public Enemy. Ted Petty was the Cheetah Kid for all of those years, working under a mask as a Tiger Mask knockoff, up and down the Indies on the East Coast, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, New York. And, he had a modicum of, but he was never going anywhere, and Johnny Grunge was just, John Rock or whatever, just the local indie guy. And he put them together and gave him the tongue-in-cheek hip hop gimmick, which was, starting to become big at the time. And, but it took time. And Terry Funk gave the promotion some credibility while Paul Heyman was getting these new acts over. It was very important. Terry Funk and Sabu. Those are the two. I mean, Sabu was just a force of nature and the hottest thing with the insider fans at the time. But you needed Terry Funk for that dose of credibility, and that was very important. And in between, he was skipping off to Japan to work, IWA Japan and later FMW and again, doing the deathmatch stuff, which this is the Terry Funk from All Japan who was, having these matches with his brother Dory for decades upon decades. And now he's doing it. Why? Because it was over. And that was the peak.
That was what it was. And that's what was over. And that was what the style was going. That was what the business was dictating. I think that's more than anything about Terry Funk is that guy always knew where things were going, what was happening in the business, never stuck in the mud, never said, well, I'm going to be, because he could have stuck around and been, grappler Terry Funk that he was in 1974 or whatever. He could have, but he
faded away.
Yeah, and he probably would have faded away like a lot of other guys at that time, but he didn't. He then said, okay, well, I'm going to be, deranged, great promo guy and deranged, kind of brawler Terry Funk that he was in the 80s. And then he could have stuck with that. He could have done that forever. And then he kind of had to alter into old, like you said, middle-aged and crazy and alter his gimmick a little bit here and there and just kind of change things a little by little every single time. And yeah, adapt his style to what the style was. And yeah, the style was, let's do these exploding barbed wire death matches. Let's do these, let's get crazy. Let's go wild. And he was great at them because he's Terry Funk. He's great at whatever he can do, but he was never afraid to try something new or try something different. I think that helped, like you said, like a Chris Jericho who was always like, all right, what's next? What am I going to do next? What's the hot new thing? What do I need to, alter my game to accommodate and fit? That's the name of the game, man. That's what it's all about. And he did it better than almost anybody else.
Yeah. So, obviously the legendary King of Deathmatch tournament, which, most people have seen by now, or at least seen clips of or certain matches off of. And then in FMW, I mean, he had his own stable, the Funk Masters of Wrestling, who ironically enough, I just wrote about this week in the match of the week before Terry Funk passed away, because I wrote about Hayabusa and Jinsei Shinzaki going to All Japan to work the Real World Tag League. And, you know, they were outsiders from FMW. And at the time, in their home promotion, they were feuding with the Funk Masters of Wrestling, Mr. Ganasuke and Hisakatsu Oya and Funk and later the Headhunters were part of the group because, you know, Victor Quinones was in the mix and the Gladiator Mike Awesome and Super Leather. So, you know, and Funk eventually left FMW, but and the Funk Masters of Wrestling, they changed. Ganasuke became the leader and they changed their name to something else that I can't remember right now. But, you know, so Funk was a mainstay in FMW while he was with ECW, and he was also, by the way, skipping off to Germany to work, you know, CWA tours at the same time as well. So, and then worked his first New Japan matches during that time as well, you know, in 1995. You know, he hadn't worked New Japan ever because he was so loyal to Baba, you know, and he even worked a few New Japan shots at that point and did sporadically, you know, throughout the rest of his career. But yeah, and then he was very instrumental, like you said, the speech before Barely Legal. And, you know, that kind of era of his career kicked off in 94, really with that Slamboree match against Tully. Because remember, he worked Tully Blanchard in the 80s when he would go to work San Antonio in the Blanchard territory. You know, he worked matches with Blanchard there and Adrian Adonis and people like that in the early 80s in San Antonio. But, yeah, so that was like deathmatch era, Terry Funk. And, you know, and then that leads into in 1998 when he goes back to the WWF and, you know, after having all of those matches and feuding with Cactus Jack, both in Japan and in the United States, in 1998, he goes to WWF and forms a team with Cactus Jack. And I think you're probably better suited to talk about this era of Terry Funk.
Yeah, this is when I first learned about, you know, Terry Funk and really kind of hone in on his career, which is kind of wild that Chainsaw Charlie is how I, you know, but then I would later, you know, be able to go back and watch so many of the things. But yeah, it was Chainsaw Charlie came in to the WWF, and it was Terry Funk in pantyhose with baby powder all over his face, and it was strange. And he carried a chainsaw around with him, and it's bizarre. And a lot of people at the time, or maybe not necessarily at the time, but in hindsight now look back and go like, what the fuck? What were they? Why were they doing this? And why was he Chainsaw Charlie and not Terry Funk? And what the hell was Vince McMahon doing? And I don't know if it was all Vince McMahon's doing. I know that this quote has kind of, you know, or this time period has been kind of debated a little bit, but I think a lot of people have attributed that Terry Funk came in and sort of said, well, I can't just be Terry Funk. Like, the fans aren't going to really care about Terry Funk anymore. I need to be something different. I need to be something unique. And I don't know if that was them telling Terry, hey, we got to change it up. That makes sense for WWF at the time, or it was Terry. But I think a lot of people have said that Terry walked in and said, like, hey, I need to be something different. I can't just be Terry Funk. And that's absurd. Like, he could just be Terry Funk and it would have been fine. But he thought, or WWF thought, or whatever, thought that he needed to be something else. So it was Chainsaw Charlie. But Jim Ross, who at the time still had, you know, pride in his job and wasn't terrible at it, he would just call him Terry Funk all the time because he was like, well, everybody knows this is fucking Terry Funk. Like, if I go out here and try to pretend to my audience that this man is not Terry Funk, my credibility is shot. I look like an idiot by saying, oh, that's Chainsaw Charlie or whatever. So he would say Chainsaw Charlie, but he'd also go, I don't know what's gotten into Terry Funk. The idea that Jim Ross would say is that, well, Terry Funk's just gone mad and now he thinks he's Chainsaw Charlie or whatever. But that's not exactly what the character was supposed to be. He was just supposed to be a chainsaw wielding, you know, maniac or whatever. And he got a good little run out of this. I mean, there's an incredible, which I think you should go and check out if you haven't. I don't know if you've ever seen this match because I know you kind of dipped out during the Attitude Era a little bit, but there's a no-holds-barred match on Raw in an era where Raw matches were not very long and not very good usually. It's, I want to say, May or June. I want to say May of 1998. I'll have to look that up, between Foley and Funk. And it's kind of, it's not even in, because at the time, Mick Foley was doing the Dude Love thing to try to get, you know, Vince McMahon to like him and appreciate him and make him the corporate champion or whatever. But this is when, you know, that wasn't working. So he decided he was going to go out and have this match against Terry Funk as Mick Foley, or I think Vince McMahon said, go out there and beat up your your friend, and then I'll maybe give you, I'll give you some love, and I'll give you a title shot or whatever it may be. And so it's not Chainsaw Charlie. It's Terry Funk versus Mick Foley, and they go out there and beat the ever-living shit out of each other, just absolutely destroy each other in this match. And it's an era where, again, like I said, Raw, you weren't getting really, really good matches like this. But really, really good one between Terry Funk and Mick Foley. And then that run would basically last up until the early summer, and then he was basically gone again. But he got a run from basically January till, I want to say, early summer. I forget exactly when he was out. And, he's in a big spot. He got a WrestleMania payday in WrestleMania 14 in the dumpster match. There's the famous angle where the New Age Outlaws, locked Funk and Foley into the dumpster and threw it off the ramp. And that was a big deal. And they, I don't know if you ever watched that live or went back and watched it. But again, in an era where you could do that sort of stuff and still treat it with some sort of reverence is, they came back from commercial and Sunny is just bawling. She's crying, and Jim Ross is in hushed tones, and they don't go to another match. They just kind of show them trying to get the guys out of the dumpster. Then they go to commercial again. They come back one more time, and Jim Ross is still like, I can't believe what we just saw. I can't believe we just saw that, or whatever. So, nowadays, again, there would be 17,000 explosions, and then they would just go to the next match in the next segment. But, it's hard to believe that even in the early Attitude Era, they still understood, that less sometimes is more in professional wrestling. So, yeah, they really sold that angle a bit. The problem was, because it's, of course, the Attitude Era, they came back later that night with like IVs sticking out of their arms or whatever, because of course they did. It's WWF. So like they did all this great angle earlier in the night, and then like, an hour later, it's like, oh my God, they're here. Oh, they broke out of the hospital and they've come here or whatever. But it's a decent little run, and that's probably when a lot of people maybe first learned about Terry Funk and saw him in this Chainsaw Charlie run. But yeah, there's some good stuff in there. There's some decent stuff, but his heart isn't fully in it, and it's not fully Terry Funk. It's a guy, it's this guy who either was so humble and didn't quite think that Terry Funk could still get over, or it's WWF still not understanding what they have in Terry Funk. Whatever it may be, it's a decent run.
Or it was him getting a bag and just, this business is about making money, and they're going to pay me to do this, and I'm going to go make some money because I'm 55 years old or whatever, 54 years old at this point. And how many more runs do I have in me?
Right.
And what's this business all about? Making money.
Yep.
So, and that's, he certainly comes from the era where that was first and foremost. And that's why he was a chameleon and would change depending on what he needed to be to remain and stay over. We glossed over, it's
we're going to gloss over so many fucking things.
And I'm so stressed doing this show.
I hate this one. I hated this. When people were like, oh man, I can't wait. I was like, I almost don't want to do this because I'm going to be so stressed out that we're going to be done with this. And they're like, you don't even mention this. And I'm like, oh, God, we didn't. We did it 2 hours and we didn't mention this, but it's Terry fucking Funk. We're not going to get to everything.
We can't hit everything. And I'm just so nervous about missing things and people being upset. But it's like, what we kind of
we're trying to go year by year. We're really trying. I had to catch it. We almost skipped over. The Memphis stuff, and it's like, I didn't want to skip over that. Hell, I guess Andrew Rich brings up a great point in the No Dopes chat room. He wasn't in the match, but Funk played a pivotal role in the Taker Mankind Hell in a Cell, as well as being Foley's real life friend and mentor, concerned for his life. And Andrew's 100% right about that. He played an immense role in that match, including taking a bump too. Telling Taker, choke slam me or whatever. Let's do something other than throw this guy off a fucking cage. Let's figure out something else on the show to do except for killing my friend or whatever. But yeah, it worked even that much better because it was Terry Funk, the real life friend, coming out there and sort of trying to stop the assault.
Yeah, you talk Funk and Cactus Jack. I mean, we kind of glossed over the King of Deathmatch tournament at the Kawasaki Dream Show. 28,757 fans in Kawasaki Stadium. For that show.
The most popular tape of all time. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's got to be there.
Mean, it's right there. I mean, that and the Best of Super Junior 94 and 95, and this show, without question, are three of the most popular tapes of all time. And, I know I wore mine out. I mean, we couldn't wait to get this one. And, of course, it was Cactus Jack and Terry Funk in the final. In a no ropes, barbed wire, exploding barbed wire boards, and exploding ring time bomb death match, of course, for the final of that one with Cactus Jack and Terry Funk, which is a legitimately great death match. I mean, some of the matches on that show fucking stink, let's be honest. But, Terry Funk, Tiger Jeet Singh in the barbed wire door and glass match, and they didn't all land. But, that main event, and it became a legendary show, and it drew almost 30,000 fans to Kawasaki Stadium. So it's just, and this is Terry Funk, and it's like you just end up glossing over things. It's like that's a huge, huge, historically important show. That we almost didn't even bother talking about. All of the ECW with the where the fans threw the chairs into the ring after they faced with Public Enemy, after Funk and Cactus faced Public Enemy. But you could see Terry, if you watch that back, he realizes, okay, this is going to be out of control. He just takes a bump and
he just goes down, protects the head,
drops, and
protects the back of his head, and says, bring him on, but I'm going to put my head over here. So
I know what's happening here. I just got to get down, and the fire, they almost burnt down the ECW arena. There's just, we kind of just blew off the whole ECW run.
Right. I mentioned a little bit the Raven stuff, and I played a lot of the clips in that intro, but the promo battle between Terry Funk and Raven, holy shit, some of the stuff that those guys had. And one of the great promos that I put a bunch of the clips on in the intro was, famous one leading up to Barely Legal, where Terry Funk would upset Raven and win the title or whatever. But the big, Raven didn't want to face Terry Funk, and this one promo comes in, and it's great stuff. It's not only just a great promo between Ric Flair, Terry Funk and Raven, but it's also the cinematography of it as well is incredible, because you have Raven sitting on the floor. He's in the back, sitting on the floor, and I think you probably know this promo by like the back of your hand, but Raven's sitting down, in his famous sitting position against the locker, and Terry Funk walks up, but you don't see Terry Funk. You see Terry Funk's legs. And he goes, "Stand up if you're going to talk to me. Let's talk, but you got to stand up."
Yeah.
And Raven's like, "If I stand up, I'm going to hurt you. And you don't want me to hurt you, old man." And Terry Funk's like, "I've been hurt 1,000 times. You stand up right now." And he keeps asking Raven to stand up. And Raven's like, "I'm not going to stand up." And it's a perfect dichotomy of this. At this time, I think he's in his mid-40s or whatever. It's this 45-year-old man trying to talk to this Gen Z grunge asshole Raven. You know what I mean? It's a generational divide here.
He's 52.
52. He's even old. Yeah. So it's like a 52-year-old trying to talk to a guy in his mid-20s who's playing, a washout Gen Zer in flannel who's just like, Gen whatever, dude. Gen X. Sorry, I keep saying Gen Z. Gen X.
Do not mix my generation with Gen Z. Please.
Right. Please, yeah. No, you have the washout, whatever generation that Raven is, and Terry can't handle this. Terry's just like, "Get up, stand up." And then finally Raven's just like, "I'm not going to do it." So Terry Funk bends down then and says, "You listen here, you little pig squeak." Now he's like, "All right, now you've made Grandpa mad," or whatever. Now you've made Dad mad. Yeah. And he gets onto his level, and the way they shot it is great. Again, you're never going to do that in today's wrestling. You're going to have 15 cameras going. You're going to have a camera on Terry. It's going to be perfectly lit. You're going to have a camera on Raven. They're going to cut between the two cameras all the time. No, in this, half the promo, you don't see Terry Funk. You see his feet, and then finally he comes into frame bending down to Raven to do the promo to say, "Fine, I'll get on your level, but I still want that match, and I still want to prove that I can beat you," type of thing. Just great stuff. It's just, it's an incredible, that entire run is masterful, and of course ends, it comes to a head, I think, in that Barely Legal 97, where with about, 15 seconds of TV time or pay-per-view time remaining, Terry Funk wins the ECW title. Beating Raven after Raven just lost or just won a match earlier in the night. So, or just minutes ago or whatever. And he has to win the title. He holds it above his head. Boom, the TV's off. The pay-per-view's off. They ran out of time after that.
As Raven describes it, he says he was aware of the time, but was never nervous and knew that they were going to get, which I don't buy at all. I think they got very lucky. And
Paul was nervous. I'll tell you that. Behind the mat, we'll tell you that Paul is sweating buckets going, "God damn it. We got 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 5 seconds. We got to go." All right. Yeah, but they got it. They got it in.
Yeah. And the thing about Barely Legal, and, I obviously lived through this and was very close to this as a fan, is that really was after the peak. The peak was really 96. 95 was great. 94 was the come up. 95 was great. 96 was really the peak, late 95 and into 96. By that point in 97, they were past the peak. It was still a very fun promotion and very good and all those sorts of things. But it's a shame that, the mass transit incident with New Jack carving up Eric Koulas, and that kind of set them back. And And if they had gotten to pay-per-view a little sooner, I don't think history changes or anything like that. But I think that more people would have been exposed to peak ECW. And I still think to this day, there's a lot of people who haven't been exposed to peak ECW. You know, they jumped in at Barely Legal, or they jumped in on TNN, which was way past the peak.
Yeah, that's, I mean, right? Honestly, I was late. I was like mid 1998 is when I think I first got into ECW. And then of course became a big fan during, the TNN run. Did not know, barely knew about what was going on, in the early days. Have only since gone back and watched all that stuff. But yeah, there's probably a lot of people like me who jumped in maybe in mid 1998 when it was getting enough buzz, or just jumped in early 1999 when it was on TNN or whatever. And that's, yeah, like you said, is not, if you have reverence for ECW and that's your era, then boy, man, there's a lot more for you. 95, 96, like you were saying.
Heyman held off Taz Sabu as long as he could because he really wanted to do it on the pay-per-view, and they didn't even touch, and it would have to be some new convoluted way to get them to interact without touching. Sabu quitting every 10 minutes. It's just
Sabu being Sabu.
Finally, when Barely Legal finally comes around, it's like, it's they were a little past the peak, and that really wasn't a great show. It was a historical show. And, you had the great, Michinoku Pro 6-man. That was on that show, right? Yeah, that was on Barely Legal. And of course, Terry Funk winning the title at the end of the show after the three-way. But after Funk won the three-way over Stevie Richards and the Sandman. But, yeah, and then, Funk stuck around for a few months after that. But he was gone by 98. I mean, because he had gone to WWF and he never went back to ECW. So by 2000, he ends up in Dying Days WCW. And quite honestly, he's one of the highlights of some horrendous.
Good. He's so good at 2000 WCW. It's Terry Funk being plopped into this fucking absurd, awful company at the time. And he's so much better than everybody else. And he's so good. Every Terry Funk thing is just, yeah, it's like I said, the highlight of 2000 WCW is Terry Funk.
Yeah, and, the match, the hardcore matches, and the hardcore match that went into the stable against Chris Candido where he gets kicked by the horse, and then he cuts the promo on the horse.
He tries to go at the horse.
Yeah, and, not the first time he's cut a promo on a horse. I mean,
no.
he was cutting promos on horses in early ECW, too, during the Eddie Gilbert era.
Yeah, I watched one where a horse farts and he goes, "Eddie, your voice has sure changed, but the smell hasn't."
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah,
that's exactly what it was. Yeah, because the horse farts and he goes, "Eddie, oh my God, your voice sounds so much different, but it smells the same."
But your breath hasn't.
Yeah, but your breath smells the same.
Yeah. So I did a big bit on that on Jovember with the farting horse. Yeah, it was. But yeah, so yeah, he was collecting them Turner paychecks at the end of Dying Days WCW, where he really was a highlight. And he went back to All Japan, post Exodus and all that. Was it post Exodus or right around that time? I guess.
Yeah, was that? He was right around there. I forget exactly.
Yeah, because let me see. Yeah, because he worked the shows. That was the Kojima era and all that, 2003 or whatnot. But, yeah. And then, I guess in 2006, when WWE is really capitalizing on the ECW nostalgia, he comes in to work with Mick Foley again and, to do the One Night Stand 2006 6-person tag. But the big memorable angle from that is when Foley told Funk to punch him in the head for real and bust him open hard way on TV. And I don't know how that went over in the back. I don't remember the details.
Probably not great. I would assume not great.
But, Mick Foley was going to, he was going to do what he wanted under that scenario, and he did. And Funk beats the living shit out of him on TV and busts him open. No blade, just bust me open with punches. And he did. And, he really fucked Foley's face up. And then they did the match at ECW One Night Stand. The second one, the 05 One Night Stand is the legendary One Night Stand, which is, and Funk wasn't on that. that's one of to me, that's one of the
why wasn't he on that show? That makes sense. I don't know.
That's one of the greatest pay-per-views of all time.
Yeah. Oh, so I'm reading here, and I guess I don't know if this is true or not, but it says in 2005, Funk received an offer to appear at the ECW reunion show One Night Stand, but turned it down in favor of working the ECW nostalgia show Hardcore Homecoming that was being put together by Shane Douglas. So maybe it was just loyalty to Shane Douglas over Vince McMahon and doing it on pay-per-view. That seems like a very Terry Funk thing to do too.
It does that, and it makes sense. You know, it makes sense too that he would work because those were like competing shows at the time. But he did come and work the one in 2006. And remember, for One Night Stand, the first One Night Stand as well, unfortunately, Rob Van Dam had the broken leg and he couldn't work that show either. And, you know, they bring him out for the promo. But it was still, to me, an all-time great show, all-time great pay-per-view show. But, and I guess here's something we missed. You know, the Terry Funk, yet another retirement when he worked Bret Hart. Remember the Bret Hart match?
Dennis Stamp. Yeah, the famous behind the mat Dennis Stamp thing. Yeah, what were those shows called? Terry Funk's Wrestle Fest or something like that. Something
Terry
around
Funk's Wrestle Fest, 50 Years of Funk. And he wrestled Bret Hart, and that's, you know, from Beyond the Mat, where, you know, the famous Dennis Stamp scene. I'm not booked, Terry. I'm not booked.
You could be the referee. You could be the referee, Dennis. I'm not booked, Terry. I'm not booked.
I'm not booked, Terry. Too proud to just, you know, two very proud men. You know?
Yeah, Terry. You could be the conversation goes on so long. Terry's like, "Well, be the referee." Dennis is like,
"Fucking guy.
I'm not booked. I'm not." Just figure it out, guys.
Poor Dennis Stamp.
Yeah, poor Dennis Stamp. Yeah,
who has also passed away, by the way. But I'm looking at that card now. Do you know who, off the top of your head, who Rob Van Dam worked on that card?
Terry Funk's WrestleFest. I'm not sure that I've seen them. I've seen the Bret Hart Terry Funk match, but I don't know that I've seen anything else from that show. I have no idea. Sabu or something. I don't know.
He worked Dory Funk Jr.
Oh, excuse me? I got to see that match. Holy shit.
Oh, my God. Hey, listen to the
1997 Dory Funk Jr. Okay, yeah, what's this card here?
Listen to the card that Terry Funk assembled.
Okay.
For this show. And, of course, from wrestlers, it's Terry Funk, so there were WWF wrestlers on the show. Wing Kanemaru versus Roadkill.
Of course. Okay, that sounds pretty fun, actually.
Taz defended the ECW television title against Chris Candido. We had Shark Tsuchiya versus Lady Kuga in some ladies action. The Youngbloods, yes, that's Chris and Mark.
Oh, sir. Wow, the Youngbloods.
Defeat the Bushwhackers. Balls Mahoney versus Bubba Ray Dudley. Shane Douglas defended the ECW title versus Tommy Dreamer. Dory Funk Jr. versus Rob Van Dam. Mankind versus Sabu with Alfonso. They went to a DQ, brother, because, interpromotional match. So that's not going to work for me, brother. So we got the DQ in the Mankind Sabu match. Hakushi, Hayabusa, and Masato Tanaka defeat the Headhunters and Jake the Snake Roberts.
Whoa, what a match. What a match. Holy crap. Hayabusa and Jake Roberts. I love that.
Yeah. And then, of course, the famous Bret Hart Terry Funk match. No DQ. So people from all kinds of promotions getting permission to work that one. That was September 97. So, Vince let all the WWF guys work that show with the ECW guys. And that's also something we almost missed. That, like, Beyond the Mat was built around that show, and unfortunately, we almost glossed over it. And he had some runs in Smoky Mountain that we haven't talked about, where he went down and worked a program with Bob Armstrong, and they main evented whatever that big show was. One of those shows in Knoxville, where Funk and Armstrong as the Bullet, which was the real main event of the show. I don't know if it necessarily went on last, but it was Sunday Bloody Sunday was the Funk versus the Bullets Texas Death Match main event that drew 3,950 fans to Knoxville. Funk came in for Night of Legends and worked a 6-man tag later on that year where he teamed with Dory and Bruiser Bedlam against Bob Armstrong, Road Warrior Hawk, and Tracy Smothers. That drew 5,000 fans. And then he came back. Let's see. What other major? I'm looking for the major shows that he worked in Smokey. I guess 93. Worked Bob Armstrong in Knoxville. That wasn't such a big show, though. But worked a house show against Bob Armstrong, too. It drew 800 fans. But he worked those two big shows in 94, based around that Bob Armstrong feud, which drew good money for Smoky Mountain. This was in between those 1993 and 1994 ECW runs, pre-Extreme, the Eddie Gilbert and very early Paul Heyman era ECW, where he was where a lot of guys actually bounced back and forth between ECW and Smoky Mountain at that time. Chris Candido stopped working ECW to go work Smoky Mountain full time around that time in 93. And before coming back to ECW after the WWF run in 90, I guess that would have been 96 or 97.
95.
Or, was it 95?
Yeah.
When Candido came back to ECW. So after the Body Duns thing. So then from there, I guess that's really that 2006 One Night Stand run was really it for Funk. At a major league level.
Yeah, he'd pop up every so often. Yeah, doing indie stuff, like you said, and showing up at, random festivals and fairs and stuff like that to do, one-off stuff. But yeah, for all intents and purposes, that's it.
Yeah, and, so much. I mean, we touched on working for Blanchard. He worked Portland. He worked Mid-Atlantic. He worked everywhere, World Class. Name a territory. And obviously he worked tons of shows in St. Louis. I mean, there's so many big matches and big feuds and big angles that you can't get to all. It's just, it's one of the longest and deepest and most significant careers in the history of wrestling. And he really might be the greatest wrestler of all time in terms of just reinventing himself and staying relevant and producing at a high level through, everybody has a different favorite era of Terry Funk, and mine is probably, if I had to pick, it would be either 89 or obviously my heart is with ECW. It would be one of those two for my favorite era of Terry Funk. What about you?
Yeah, me, it's probably 89 for me. If I had to pick, it would definitely be 89. Probably the second would be that early 80s stuff. I really, really like a lot of that stuff. The stuff with Dusty, the stuff with Lawler. That era is really good. I think 89 is my top though. But I'd say that early stuff with Lawler is right up there for sure. But like you said, you could ask, another person and they're going to say, well, the 70s stuff with the Funks or whatever. Someone's going to say ECW. Somebody might say Chainsaw Charlie. You know what I mean? Like there's no wrong answer. You can name a time period in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and hell, you want to go Terry Funk, ECW or WCW 2000, go for it. Knock yourself out. You could do that too. It's just timeless. Just an absolutely timeless guy. There's a Trevor Dame tweet that I think just sums it up perfectly for Terry Funk. It says, quote, people watch Forrest Gump and go, how unrealistic that one man could be present at so many major world events for a period of decades. But Terry Funk did that in wrestling for real. Territories, Japan, NWA, WWF, WCW, ECW, WWE. If something big was popping off, Terry was there. And that, Sean Sedor, who's in our Noto chat room then, he replied to that tweet by saying he also had appearances in early days of Ring of Honor, TNA, the original version of MLW. He worked a Battle Royal in PWG. Like, there is no era or company that didn't have Terry Funk in it. You know what I mean? Like, what it from the early 70s until today, it's like Terry Funk was wrestling. Just in some form or fashion, somewhere, Terry Funk was there doing something.
And you touched on it earlier, but it can't be stressed enough. I mean, he just worked in a way that wrestlers aren't even allowed to work today. Just go out, feel the crowd, and see what the crowd wants, and then do it. And I'm not trying to sound like some old guy who everything was better back then. It used to be better. But, I mean, you watch now, particularly in WWE, and you'll see two house-trained wrestlers, you see it all the time, blow a finish or blow a spot. What do? They go right back to the same spot, and it's just so non-organic. And none of them, wrestlers are not taught to work the crowd anymore. They're taught to do what the agent says and work the kind of match that's pre-planned in the back. And you see these situations where we talk about it all the time, where the crowd doesn't respond in the way that the action intends, or the way that the story intends. And there's no attempt at adjusting for that or changing plans, or because they can't do it, Rich. They don't know how. They weren't taught, and it's just different now. And, and those are the ways that it was better. There's ways that it's better now. There's more action in the matches now. There's more athleticism. All those things are true, and I appreciate all those things. But there's a lot of ways where wrestling was better then. And, no one was better than Terry Funk at working the match that the crowd wanted that night. And nobody was better than Terry Funk at reinventing himself and being what he needed to be to get over in that time and place and stay over and make money. And aside the fact that by all accounts, just the nicest man to fans, and knew how to treat fans, and emphasized that, you got to treat the fans right. And you never hear a negative story about Terry Funk when it comes to a fan interaction or anything along those lines. You hear nothing but glowing stories and glowing praise of how he treated the fans.
I would extend that to promoters and wrestlers too. I don't know of any promoter I've ever talked to, promoter story, or even a wrestler story that Terry Funk, that guy's kind of an asshole or whatever. Never, ever.
Oh God, no. No, never. Never. And in terms of great matches in a bunch of different styles, I mean, who can compare?
Oh yeah, his match guide on Cage Match is incredible. So I misspoke. There was a time where the Ric Flair Terry Funk I Quit match was his top one, but some way I don't know. People have been watching this like I did this week and rated it higher. Abdul the Butcher and the Sheik versus Dory Funk and Terry Funk is actually number one now. That match from 1979 is number one.
That's the one I mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I talked about watching that. I watched that earlier today too. So you got that match. Number two was Ric Flair versus Terry Funk. So right then and there, you're already seeing a multitude of differences there between the Funk Brothers versus Butcher and Sheik is the number one match. The second one is Ric Flair versus Terry Funk, I Quit. Then you go to Onita and Funk, the no rope exploding barbed wire time bomb death match or whatever.
Which we didn't even talk about.
Right. Right. Which is an incredible story, too. Which these guys are beating the living shit out of each other, destroying each other, literally trying to kill one another. And all the buildup was to the tick-tock, tick-tock. This time is about to go. This time is about to go. It's 10 seconds. These guys are still beating each other. The ring's going to explode when that clock hits 0. So Terry Funk is on the ground. Onita's got the advantage. And he sees that the clock is at 2. And it's at 1. And he jumps on Terry Funk to try to protect him. Recreated poorly by AEW with Eddie Kingston and John Moxley. Very poorly.
And maybe people don't realize that was a recreation.
Right.
And Onita having compassion. And I just have the image in my head of he's conflicted. He doesn't know what to do. Funk is dead. And the bomb is going to go off. And Onita says, fuck it, I respect him too much. He gets in there, he's slapping him in the face. He's trying to drag him.
Yeah, get up. Come on, we're going to die if we don't get out of here.
And he realizes time's going to be up, and he just covers him up and sacrifices himself. And I can't believe, we didn't even mention that.
We didn't even mention that. One of the most iconic visuals in wrestling history. And yeah, the crowd, they're just come to tears. They're crying at this romantic thing of these guys trying to just murder one another. But when the time came, God damn it, he didn't want that. Not like this, not this way. This is still my friend. This is still my comrade. This is still, so protects him. And they walk out of the ring hand in hand as the crowd is just bawling, that just tears flowing in the audience as these two guys have proven that friendship is more important than, a stupid wrestling match.
Yeah. What else is on that list?
Yeah. So then you got the Beulah, Terry Funk, Tommy Dreamer versus Edge Lead and Mick Foley match. So we talked about ECW One Night Stand 2006, followed up by Harley Race versus Terry Funk as number 5, which again, there could be the modicum of difference, or the worlds of difference between Harley Race and Terry Funk, number 5 on the match guide, and number 3, Onita and Terry Funk. And that just speaks to it, this guy. 1977 and 1993. And they're completely different. They're both great. They're both incredible, but for completely different reasons with completely different...
That's the Race Funk match from July that I referenced earlier?
Yes, correct. Yep.
In 77.
Mm-hmm. That's the one. Then you have Hanson, Gordy versus the Funks. That is in 1983.
That's the retirement match.
Yep. Mm-hmm. And then you got Jumbo versus Funk, straight up singles match, 2 out of 3 falls. That is in June of 76. And then you have number 8 is the Lawler Funk Empty Arena match. Number 9 is the Flair Funk Great American Bash match, not the I Quit match.
Right.
But also, which is really good too. I did kind of gloss over it. That match fucking rocks too. Go watch that match too. Definitely watch the I Quit, but you should probably watch both, to be honest. And then number 10 is Stan Hansen versus Terry Funk from 1983. But just the differences.
And we didn't really talk much about the Funk Hansen wars. There's so much. There's just so much. It's just a incredible career. Just quite possibly the greatest wrestler to ever walk the earth.
Yeah, anybody who makes that argument, you'd be hard pressed to argue against that person. It's like, what's your evidence against it? You know what I mean? Like, it might not be.
I
your
wouldn't
guy.
argue. I mean, I don't even know if I necessarily agree, but I wouldn't argue. I mean, I can't formulate an argument against it. I'd go, okay.
Right. If someone said Terry Funk's my greatest wrestler ever, it'd be real hard to sit down and go. And like, again, I don't know if he would be my pick either, but I don't think I could say, ooh, really? I don't know. Because what would you say? What would be your retort to that?
And you start factoring in promos and crowd connection and things like that, and then it becomes really hard.
Yeah, then at that point, you're just splitting hairs on a guy who had a 40-year career of excellence. It's like... that everybody loves, that nobody dislikes, everybody loves, and just monumentally influential to the business, and will be forever. So,
and in terms of drawing emotion, I mean,
yeah,
it's the Onita deal, the Forever promo. You put together the package at the top with Desperado. I mean, that was the famous go home video package for Barely Legal. At his father's grave and everything. I mean, you just couldn't. It's just, there was a crowd connection and the ability to draw emotion that is just, maybe better than anyone that's ever done this before. And it's a hard line to walk too, because you can really cross that line into hokey very easily, right? And it's like into melodrama. And we've seen so many examples of wrestlers who aren't able to toe that line. And it's like, oh, this is corny now. This is melodramatic. But Funk walked that line and he nailed it every time. Look, Dylan Hales, he had another great tweet. He said, when I say Terry Funk's the greatest wrestler of all time, I'm paraphrasing. He goes, the way I explain it and the way I back up that position, that he's the greatest wrestler of all time, is Terry Funk is the greatest babyface of all time, and Terry Funk is the greatest heel of all time.
It's hard to argue. Yeah.
It's very hard to argue.
Right.
Yeah, you just nod your head. You're like, yeah, you know what? You're probably right.
Yeah, I think Dylan's always said that one of the big reasons why, because he never let him down either. There was never a match where you were like, all right, here we go, Terry Funk, and then it was just like, all right, well, that wasn't that good. Or that didn't quite deliver to me. It's like, it's Terry Funk. It's just like, that was pretty fucking awesome. Everything was pretty awesome.
It's funny too. Another we didn't mention, after he does the angle with Flair and he returns to the ring, who's that first TV match with? Eddie Guerrero, a young, unknown Eddie Guerrero. I did this for Match of the Week a few months ago. And he gives Eddie Guerrero as much as you can give the guy, considering you're about to get a bunch of world title shots.
Right, in 1989. We're talking Eddie Guerrero in 1989, by the way.
Yeah, and he obviously knows that Eddie is going to be great. He knows the family. He got him the match, and he's trying to give him as much shine as possible, and it's a very interesting match from that standpoint. But the post-match promo is almost even better than the match because, he goes on about, you talk about your top 10 contenders, and he's because Flair was needling him with the top 10 contender bit, and he weaves it into his promo, and I mean, and that's become sort of a kind of a cult classic match and promo over time, and it just so many others I know we're forgetting, but Terry Funk.
I was trying to grab the quote from her, not to interrupt, but there's a quote, I believe it's in either the Rise and Fall of ECW DVD or whatever, but it's Paul Heyman talking about Terry Funk, and you mentioned the Eddie Guerrero match. That's a perfect time to bring it up, and I'm paraphrasing here because I don't remember the exact quote, and I was trying to find it, but I wasn't able to do it. But he said that he's one of the only veterans from that era with the reputation of being legitimately tough, but also had the business sense to say, I got to get to the next generation. I got to get that generation ready for there to be a business, for there to be an industry to leave behind something too. So it just essentially like, I need to build that next generation so there's always something for me to come back to.
Yeah,
I'm here now, but I don't want to go away. But if I just do everything that's going to help me at this exact moment and help me at this time and get me over and make me the most money, that's great. But what the hell is this business going to be then in 5 years, in 10 years, in 15 years? And he always looking forward, always looking to what was next, who was next, who could be next, who could get that next generation over. He wanted to leave the wrestling business a better place than he came into it. And he did. He absolutely did. And the quote that Heyman also gave during the Barely Legal, 97, I talked about that pre-match speech. He was unselfish in selfish times. It's 1997 in professional wrestling. It's as cutthroat as can be. People are moving back and forth between WCW and WWF and NWO and like Heyman says there, unselfish in selfish times. In a very selfish business, there were very few people that were as unselfish as Terry Funk was.
Yeah.
There it is, Terry Funk. I'm sure we've missed 1,000 things, so sorry. We went about 2 hours, as much as we could possibly say about Terry Funk, but you could do a whole show on Terry Funk. You could do a whole 4-hour show on Terry Funk if need be. But I think we covered it about as good as we could. We went about basically year by year, and still missed King of the Death match and the Empty Arena match along the way, and had to go back and catch up on that, which is again speaks to his incredible career and his incredible legacy. So yes, Terry Funk passes away at the age of 79. And of course, as we talked about in the top of the show, if you're maybe just joining us, we did touch a little bit up on Bray Wyatt. If you did not know about that, Windham Rotunda, Bray Wyatt passed away at the age of 36, just an hour or so before we went live here. So still kind of getting details about that. Looks to be a heart attack due to contracting COVID and having some issues, some heart issues related to the COVID. And then of course, succumbing to this heart attack. Just today. So, yeah, 36 years old for Windham Rotunda, and Terry Funk passes away at the age of 79. So, yeah, unfortunately, we are going to have to move on to some other things in this show, and of course, we have All In coming up. I feel like Excalibur this week. I'm sure you talked. I don't know if you talked about this in your Thursday Dynamite review that you did over at flagshippatreon.com. By the way, patreon.com/Voices of Wrestling. Excalibur having to do a DraftKings read in the Owen Hart voice after the Phoenix beatdown. Did you talk about that?
Oh God, yeah. No, I didn't. But that was very funny.
We'll hopefully get some details on Ray Phoenix's condition leading up to All In. But DraftKings is your home for the sports bet. It's like, okay, man, you got to let go of the Owen voice if you're going to do a DraftKings read. Like, we can't have you solemnly be like, oh, you can participate at DraftKings.com or download the DraftKings app. Okay, well. Okay, boys, we have to keep going with the show. And it's he's like holding back tears. He's talking about the $50 free play that you get when you sign up on the app or whatever. It's like, come on, bro. You could let the hush tones go. It's. But
I do see. Speaking of DraftKings, as we go through this preview for All In, the odds are up, Rich.
Oh, we got some odds. So we got some odds. Okay, let's. Yeah, we need to get somebody to sponsor us here. Who's this sports book, and why are they not sponsoring us?
Well, I'm not. No, there's no free ads here. But
damn right.
I do have some odds from a certain sports book that may have been a sponsor in the past.
Is it one that I might have quite a number of dollars still invested in?
It might be one where you have some units.
I have units in not dollars. Did I say dollars? I meant units in this entertainment purpose only. Yes, entertainment purposes only. I got a lot of units in that one. Okay.
A lot?
I may have
that's
logged
relative.
In. I may have logged in.
That's relative.
Yeah. With that said,
you're Rich is a baller. You might have a lot.
I have not. This particular book has not stopped my ability to bet highly on professional wrestling. So I hit it big with an Indy 500 bet last year as well. So
Oh, did you?
Marcus Erickson helped me out big.
Did you pour buttermilk all over yourself?
I did to celebrate. I got my routine glass of buttermilk, and it sucked because that night I couldn't go to bed with a cool glass of buttermilk. But
sounds disgusting, to be honest, but okay.
There it is. All right, so All In Wembley coming up this weekend. Of course, if you're outside of the United States and you're ordering it on Fight, be sure to use our link. Go to voicesofwrestling.com/fight. If you're going to order that. If you're in America, you got pay-per-views. You got Dave & Buster's to watch it at. You got BR Live that cannot work for me again. We'll see. And then, we're going to go live immediately following the show for Instant Reaction Live at Flagship, patreon.com, patreon.com/Voices of Wrestling, and voicesofwrestling.com/Patreon. Now, of course, this show is happening in England, so if you're ready to, hey, I'm going to go listen to those guys at 10 p.m., that's not going to work. You're going to have to listen to us. I think roughly 5 Eastern is my guess is when the show will be over. 4 Central, 5 Eastern, I believe. That's kind of what I'm envisioning. It could be a little later. I don't know what their pay-per-view window is. I don't know if they have a hard out in Wembley Stadium. I don't know anything about that. I usually can time these, regular American pay-per-view shows. I don't have any idea about this one, but I think somewhere around 4 or 5 p.m. Central Time will be live, so 5 or 6 Eastern. Whenever the show's over, that's when we're going live. So that's an easy way to watch. If you're watching the show, we'll be live immediately afterwards. That'll be Instant Reaction Live, All In Wembley, coming up this Sunday. But, Joe, let's talk about the card here and a little bit of the build and kind of give our predictions and the preview and stuff and, kind of big picture thoughts about the build itself, which has gotten a lot of, a lot of, I think, negative reaction about the build of from this show and from other, people as well. There's been a lot of people that have kind of echoed what we've said is that this feels like it should... It doesn't feel like it should. It should feel like a real big deal. It should feel like the real awesome, like, oh my God, this show is here. Oh my God, one of the biggest wrestling shows of all time is coming in just a couple of days. And I thought I liked Dynamite. I thought it was a very good go-home episode of Dynamite. I think they built the matches they were going to build pretty well, with a few exceptions, which we're going to talk about here. But I'm into the show. I think it's going to be a fantastic show. And I think the booking is usually when these AEW pay-per-views happen, the booking doesn't matter that much because the talent is so good, it can bail out any bad booking. It can bail out any booking. It doesn't matter if the booking's good or bad. The talent is just going to be incredible. And there's going to be no difference here. I think this is going to be a spectacular show in front of 80 to 90,000 people, whatever that exact number is going to be. We'll find out. Hopefully on Sunday we'll have that number, if not, very soon after. I think it's going to be a very, very good show, but it's hard to feel like we're days away, that we're on the precipice of this show that should feel like one of the biggest wrestling shows of all time. And I'm still where I was last week and a couple weeks ago when we were talking about this. I still am anticipating this as much as I'm anticipating just any other AEW pay-per-view. And I don't feel like I should feel that. I should feel like I'm really days away from this extremely special, unique, different, one-of-a-kind, once-in-a-lifetime shows. And I'm just not there yet with this show. And it's not going to happen, obviously, because we're a couple days away from it. Again, with that said, I'm sure it's going to be a great show, and I'm sure we're going to come on this instant reaction and talk about how this was great and this was interesting and what an atmosphere, what a crowd and whatnot. But yeah, it's just, I got to call it like I see it. This was an opportunity to really book to making the show feel like the once in a lifetime moment it is, and it's just a normal pay-per-view for AEW, and that's, I guess that's fine. But to me, I just want I expected and wanted a little bit more out of this build and thought that they could do it, and they didn't. They did it. They booked a regular pay-per-view to me, which is fine. The regular pay-per-views are really, really good. I just thought this one was going to be a little different, and I guess that's on me.
I don't know why that's on you.
I guess it's on me for expecting them to,
I
get their shit together enough to book a...
Hold on a second.
Yeah.
Why is it on you to expect the biggest wrestling show of all time to have a bigger card than something that looks like a Full Gear card?
I know.
It's a good looking card. And here's the thing. It's going to end up being a great show. We all know that. And it's going to feel enormous the day of, because I'm still not sure people understand the scope of what 90,000 people in Wembley is going to look like. Okay?
Sound like.
So the show's going to be great. But there's massive issues in this company in terms of long-term booking and doing things, flying by the seat of your pants. Stuff is just messy. And it's not the way it was in the early days of the company, where it was obvious things. When this company rolled out, Tony Khan knew who the first 4 champions were going to be. And he stuck to the plan. And it was all laid out long-term. You had the Hangman tag team with Kenny Omega and the feud with the Bucks and the whole Hangman saga, which was a great long-term story. You had MJF and Cody Rhodes, which was a great long-term story. You had Cody Rhodes and Darby Allin, where it was a long-term story intended for Cody Rhodes to get Darby Allin over to the next level, starting with the draw and all that. There's a million examples that I can give you. There was Chris Jericho making a comment in passing in a hallway to Scorpio Sky that seemingly didn't mean anything. That led to a little television program between the two. It's just in the earlier days of the promotion, there were more very clear and obvious long-term stories and directions that they stuck to and saw through. Now it feels like there's some of that. MJF Adam Cole, without a doubt, is plotted out step by step meticulously and is plotted out beyond what we're going to see on Sunday, okay, or Saturday, whatever day it is. Sunday, right?
Sunday. It's going to be Sunday. Yeah, don't screw that up. It's going to be on Sunday. Don't get ready on Saturday.
Yeah. So that's an example of one where they are doing it, and the Billy Gunn thing has been, obviously a good, but there's so many other examples. Can I give you a couple?
Well, first off, the best part that the most clear example there is that the second long-term well-built story you brought up was badass Billy Gunn returning at Wembley Stadium. And you're right. That is. And that's like the second most well thought out.
Look, I'm prepared to bury that when we go over the
absolutely.
matches.
But sure. You're right that's one of the more meticulously better planned out stories of the entire thing. What?
Can I just give you a couple examples? Let's take a look at this Golden Vampire thing with CM Punk and Samoa Joe. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Which was a good idea. But again, it could have been so much better. Why wasn't the Golden Vampire doing jobs every week on Collision in the lead up to that? Then you have the Golden Vampire in there. Fans are used to seeing him every week. They just think it's some new jobber who loses. He should have lost to Miro. He should have lost to, go right down the line. They do squash matches on Collision every week anyway.
Right.
So it wouldn't even have felt
that's
place.
the show where it would work. It wouldn't seem out of place on Collision at all.
Right. So they should have been using the Golden Vampire week after week until it just becomes, okay, that's just a guy like Serpentico or whatever other jobber you like to use. Then you do the match against Joe the same way you did it on TV, where he gives him to go to sleep and reveals himself as Punk and everybody goes nuts. But it has more impact because you've seen this Golden Vampire lose to everybody in 30 seconds in the lead up, right? And I was actually talking to John Muse about this whole thing. And and then you have the Golden Vampire come back the following week, and you have Joe come out and attack him, beat him to a pulp, pull off the mask, and it's not Punk. And then Joe's frustrated about that. That's how you do this angle. You know how I know that? Because I've seen this angle done a million times in every territory in America.
Yeah, right.
What do? They blow through it in literally 90 seconds. They blew through this angle in 90 seconds.
Yeah, a guy comes out and the guy does the go to sleep and the guy is CM Punk. Okay, great.
Let me ask you this. Who gets the most heat on every AEW show? Please don't blow the answer, Rich.
CM Punk.
What heel act, what heel performer gets the most heat to the point where WWE fans are accusing AEW of copying Dom and hitting the boo button?
Yeah, Don Callis.
Don Callis and Takeshita, right? Why hasn't Takeshita beaten a jobber every week on TV on every fucking show that they have? Why? Why did they do that once with Takeshita? And then we didn't see him again for 6 weeks.
That's the best part is they obviously knew it would be effective and they did it once and then never went back to it.
And then they never go back to it. And it's the hottest heel act in the company. And they simply don't bother. This guy should be beating jobbers in 30 seconds every week on every show, and Don Callis should be cutting another promo on Kenny Omega and building heat and getting booed out of every building. But they don't do it. Ricky Starks and CM Punk.
Well, Takeshita, he just comes out occasionally in a leather jacket, and we're like, okay,
yeah.
I hate this guy, I think. I'm not sure. It's like, yeah, okay.
Didn't he hire 9,000 people to clean this shit up? Ricky Starks and CM Punk. This is how you know they don't have their shit together, okay? Ricky Starks whips Ricky Steamboat with the belt.
Mm-hmm.
Great angle.
Yep, great.
Gets suspended. Great. That's fantastic. One thing on Collision they want to do suspensions. They want to do fines, old school shit for, being a bad guy. So he whips Ricky Steamboat. He gets suspended for 30 days.
Yeah, gone. Right? Gone for 30 days.
Going to be off, all in. Going to be off, all out. We come back the next week. All of a sudden, it's now 28 days. It's 4 weeks, which comes out to 28 days. Why? For one of two reasons. Reason number one, sloppy shop and nobody did the math, and they're like, oh shit, we need Ricky for all out. Somebody count the days. 1, 2, 3, 4, and they fucked up the math. Or reason number two, they changed plans again on the fly, and they planned not to have Ricky on all out, but then changed their mind during the course of the week and decided that they were going to have Ricky on all out. But oh shit, we said he was suspended for 30 days. So now we have to figure out a way to make the math work. So let's go on TV and say it was actually 28 days and put the heat on the babyface announcer. Rich, that sucks. Whether it's sloppy shop and somebody didn't do the math right, or they're changing the booking on the fly again.
Mm-hmm.
Choose your adventure. It sucks.
Right. Yeah, that was a theme. That was the theme of your Dynamite review this week on the Flagship Patreon, which I did listen to that segment that you were talking about. And yeah, the Starks thing too. It's not even just now he has a manager's license. Like, that's just lazy booking, but it's not like sloppy booking. I think that's lame booking. I think that he's suspended, but he's got a manager's license, so he can show up every single week, but he can't wrestle. Whatever. Okay, I kind of roll my eyes at that. I think that's just stupid or whatever. But it's not sloppy. Like you said, changing it from 30 days to 28 days is sloppy. The stuff with Phoenix, which we're going to talk about, the stuff with AR Fox, the stuff with a multitude of guys that it seems like week of we're finding out who doesn't have a passport and who can't come to England and who can't leave America. And it's like, what? Come on, like get. I guess that was like I said, it was my fault for thinking that. But I really thought that of all the shows that you would sit down 3 months ahead of time and go, here is the card for All In Wembley. Boom, here it is. Bam. If something goes wrong, if we have to change something, so be it. But here's my card, and I'm sticking to it. And here's how we get to that. And the fact that we are still piecemealing this thing together a week out is like, I don't know, man.
Changes on the fly.
I don't know, man.
And and then I have people telling me yesterday that Collision was still being written an hour before the show starts. I mean, it's just
great. So we're there now.
Now I understand it was a couple days early when it's usually on Saturdays, but this isn't anything unusual. And it's like, the Starks thing, obviously either plans changed or somebody didn't do math right. I mean, what are we doing here? And then you look at, Jack Perry and that whole thing with Jungle Hook where they team maybe 2 or 3 times. Then Perry does the Pillars deal and they put the tag team on hold, which I don't know why you need to do that, but they did. Then after that's over with,
which they don't have to. We've always talked about one of the great things that are in early AEW and great things in a lot of other wrestling promotions keep them aligned. Yeah, hey, you're doing your thing for now. That's cool. We'll still team together, and when you're done, and we'll come back. We'll team. That's fine. Like, guys can get along with that. That shouldn't cause. But that team had another year in them. For God's sake.
Well, here's my point. So then they put them back together after that for another week. or 2 or whatever it was. The point is not an extended period of time where fans are going to get emotionally invested in the team and the breakup. Because you don't have time. Because they how many times did they actually team?
Oh,
3 or
Jesus.
4? 3 or 4?
So, no more than 5. But I can't even remember how many. Yeah.
Then you do the Sonata match, and Perry loses, and he turns on Hook. Right? Wouldn't it have been smarter to keep the team together longer, to let the fans form an emotional bond with the team, to rally behind them, have them lose a tag team title challenge where maybe there's some miscommunication at the end of the match, right? And then have Jack Perry blame Hook and turn on him for that. Wouldn't that have had more emotional impact? Wouldn't it have mattered more if they teamed 20 times on TV instead of 3? You know what I mean? The way they did it, Jack Perry turns on him after the Sonata match. Why? Why is he mad at Hook after he lost the Sonata? That makes far less sense than being mad at Hook because they lost a tag team match going for the tag team titles. There's just better ways that they could do these things, but they don't let anything breathe. Nothing is planned long-term anymore. Nothing is fleshed out. I shouldn't say nothing, but a lot of things, it's just not, you're not seeing the long-term story. It's like everything is done on the fly. Nothing is given a chance to settle in and marinate. And you're not setting fans up for things to then get that emotional response you're looking for.
Right. You can tell when stuff is being booked and planned out months and hell, weeks in advance, or hell, years in advance for the early AEW, and you can tell when they're not. And I absolutely feel right now that we're in a period where stuff feels like it's changing week by week, and we're seeing it. I mean, it's obvious. If you watch this game enough, if you watch wrestling enough, you're well aware when things are being plotted out and changed and altered and moved around. You don't have to be an insider. You don't have to have scoops with a Z or whatever, but you can watch the show and just go like, oh, gee, okay. I mean, just in this episode alone, we had 2 matches get dramatically altered in terms of who was going to be in the match and how many people were going to be in the match and all this sort of stuff. And like, that's just sloppy, man, for the go home show. That like, I don't know. I just, there's a company that I used to really, really appreciate the long-term storytelling. Like I talked about this in the recent Sky's the Limit episode that I did on I'm doing the Cruiserweight Classic retrospective series 7 years later since the Cruiserweight Classic on our Patreon. And I'm talking about a match that happened. It was TJ Perkins and Johnny Gargano in the quarterfinals of the Cruiserweight Classic. Now the match is structured around Johnny Gargano's knee is destroyed, and it got destroyed in a takeover match against the Revival, obviously FTR. And when you look at the timeline, they had to film the Cruiserweight Classic match like 37 days before they did the takeover match. So they had to say, hey, Johnny, for takeover, we're going to have the Revival work over your knee and destroy your knee. So how about you sell that here in this Cruiserweight Classic thing? You know what I mean? Like, and it might seem nerdy to some people, but I love that shit. I love the idea that everybody had to get in a room and they had to say, Johnny, you got to sell the knee because what we're going to do is in the takeover match, the Revival are going to beat on your knee, and that's how they're going to win. And nobody could, brother, that's not going to work for me. Nobody could say, they had to stick to that plan. They had to know in July what their plan was going to be for August. And this is NXT and the fucking Cruiserweight Classic. And this is not even a bygone era. I'm not talking about 1972. I'm talking about 2016. And it's like something like that happens, and you're like, yeah, that's what this game should be. This game should be all about long-term planning, planting seeds, figuring things out, working, having the match and then working back. Okay, we know at this day, on this time, we want this guy to beat this guy for this thing or whatever. How do we get there? Let's now work our way back. And that was happening for so long in AEW, and now it really doesn't feel like it is. And with that said, All In is still going to be a really good show, but it's like you just feel like, man, like it reveals a lot of their big issues right now, and a lot of the week to week and the changing and you can sense the chaos that's going on in that company. You just can. You can just sense the chaos when you watch an episode of Dynamite.
Yeah, you can feel it. Why is Hangman Page never on TV?
Great question. I don't know.
I mean, the guy's never on TV.
Yeah.
Let alone forget wrestling a match. That's absurd.
I think somebody said that last time he wrestled the singles match, pitchers and catchers were reporting to spring training, and that era of spring training was the last time.
He's arguably, yeah, it's ridiculous. He's arguably he's like the protagonist of the company.
Yeah. Yeah, arguably the most important guy in the character. I don't know.
I'm starting to think something might be going on. Like, why does the guy never come to work?
Do they forget? Is there like an accounting error that they just
on the roster? Do they what's the deal with Hangman Page? This would have been a perfect spot. This show.
His last Joe, can you even? I'm going to try to make you guess. I guess I already gave it away by saying what was his last Dynamite singles match on Dynamite.
I couldn't even wager a guess. I have no clue.
February 15th of this year, he defeated Kip Sabian.
How is that even possible?
It's August.
Now, I understand that they were waiting to re-sign these guys, and maybe Tony didn't want to push people who were going to walk.
Okay.
But they've been signed now for a month. Why is Adam Hangman Page not on TV every week giving a flippy-do lariat to some geek and pinning them in the center of the ring? Why? Because his company, they just don't book that way. He's got to be in some kind of convoluted story. So great, he's in some 6-man tag in the pay-per-view. You know what I would have done with him on the pay-per-view, the protagonist of my company? Shingo's in town, Rich. I would have had him beat Shingo clean in the middle. You think New Japan gives a shit?
No, they don't care. Guy's not even on the Wrestle Kingdom poster.
He's going to lose the day before to Will Ospreay. What's the difference?
Right.
I would have done something. Tomohiro Ishii. Anyone.
Right, whatever.
Give this man a singles match.
Put him on the fucking show.
Let him cook. And then say he's climbing the... It's like... I don't understand.
Yeah, now that the stuff with the Elite is done and the anarchy in the arena is behind him, now, Hangman Adam Page is ready to get back to the title that he has in it. Because the man lost the title and he's just been like, all right, well.
Was he even involved in the angle last night with...
No.
No. Where... Someone tell me where this man is.
I don't know. He was at Blood and Guts. I know that. He was at Anarchy in the Arena. I know that. But then after that, I don't know. Yeah, like why in story or in canon or whatever, why would this man not want to get back the title? He lost it by referee's decision, or he lost his match against Moxley by referee's decision or whatever. Lost his title in May or whatever of 20. The guy isn't going back. He doesn't care about winning the title again. Like why? You know what I mean? It's just perplexing. It's like this guy should always be, like you said, he's the protagonist of he should always be in the mix in some way, shape, or form. Whether if he's doing stuff with the Elite, great, that gets him out of the title picture. But when he's done doing stuff with the Elite, I want him seeing taking heads off with the lariat and saying, all right, I want that title again. CM Punk took that title from me. John Moxley defeated me, but I want that title again. And hell, he lost to John Moxley because he got knocked out. Legit. Remember how great that story was of, hey, Hangman Page is going to come back and prove everybody wrong. Well, he came back, but now he's just kind of doing things, you know?
Can I talk about this? Another just poor example of just blowing through a year's worth of storylines. And like, however, people always get annoyed with me because I'll be like, oh, they did everything in 2 weeks. And they're like, well, actually it was 5 weeks from, you get the idea.
Well,
So
hey,
I'm
on Dynamite, they did a month and a half of stories in 13 minutes or whatever.
Yeah, so I'm preemptively yelling at the people who love to do that. Here's my point with AR Fox and Swerve. First of all, they do the whole AR Fox push in a matter of 4 days. He wins the match on the buy-in of the ROH pay-per-view, and then Darby lobbies for him to get the match against Orange Cassidy, remember? And then after the match, he turns on Darby. First of all, they had never established that Darby and AR Fox have this bond. They never established that ever. And all the time that AR Fox,
I think they did the one. Remember, they did that one promo when we thought he was talking about Buddy Wayne, but he was actually talking about AR Fox.
Well, I don't remember it, which speaks to my point.
Yeah, well, there was the Darby, just so people don't go, Darby took the promo, but it was stupid. It was just like, because Darby was backstage and he was next to Nick Wayne and he was getting interviewed by Renee or something like that, and he's like, there's one man that trained me, that saw the potential of a Darby Allin, that saw what I was, and you and I both talked about this, that we were like, oh, he's going to talk about Buddy Wayne and talk about Nick Wayne, and he turns around and goes, AR Fox, and we're like, what?
Well, you can throw it in. It's all the same time period anyway.
Right.
So then he gets the match. They do the turn. Again, same thing with the Jack Perry hook thing. Fans did not have a chance to feel any kind of emotional bond with this Darby AR Fox thing because it was 4 days long. Okay? So they do the turn, and he joins the group, and then they break into Nick Wayne's house and beat him to a bloody pulp.
Which was incredible.
Taunt him.
A great
It was great. They taunt him about his dead father and all this and that. Then they have the match on Dynamite last night, which is only a month later or whatever it is, a couple weeks later.
By the way, AR Fox shows up in a bloody shirt of Nick Wayne's blood from the beatdown.
Which he throws at his mother.
Yes.
Okay, so they lose. Swerve decides, oh, well, I don't like this guy anymore, and they turn on him. Okay? Which, by the way, they already had a match booked for All In.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, changing plans. Not having your shit together.
Bad leadership out of Swerve. Bad leadership out of Swerve to be changing your partner so close to the match. So
bad leadership. I don't think it's out of Swerve. So they turn on him, and then Darby comes down and like just immediately re-embraces the guy.
Right, AR, I love you, brother. And he picks up AR Fox. AR Fox hugs him, and it's like water under the bridge. Yeah, poor
and
Nick Wayne's like, hold on a minute, whoa, that guy beat the fuck out of me.
What's Nick Wayne supposed to think about this?
Right.
What's Nick Wayne supposed to think about this? The guy tried to kill me in my own home.
Yeah, and he just threw a bloody shirt, a shirt of my blood at my mother, and tried to murder me at my house. I don't know if I'm down with this guy, Darbs. I'm sorry, man.
The old AEW would have Nick Wayne and AR Fox have tension from here on out. They wouldn't like each other. If AEW does that, I'll come on the air and apologize. But I don't think they're going to do that. The old AEW would have, because they were very much like Dragon Gate in that way. Nothing was forgotten. Nick Wayne was murdered a month ago, and it's already been forgotten. Oh, no problem, AR. You're back with us now.
Yeah.
On top of it makes Darby look like a geek. It makes AR Fox look like a geek. And it makes Nick Wayne look like a geek.
I half expected last night. I half expected AR to like beat him down again, as like a swerve double, like a swerve or whatever. Where it was like, because it was so geeky that he was just like, hey man, I love you, and I thought AR Fox was gonna go, oh yeah, I love you too, and then like beat him down again or whatever, and Swerve could laugh or whatever. It was a way to get an edge or whatever. No, it was just like AR's like, yeah, I'm standing with these guys now. It's like, you weren't standing with them 14 minutes ago. What changed? Like, why did all this change? And then Jesus Christ, this wasn't even half of the angles that happened.
Now I've heard some people say, oh well, he has a funeral to attend and he can't go to London.
We don't know that. That's not the story.
Hold on. Now that would be life. And I get it. First of all, that's a rumor, and it's unconfirmed. And we know the grandmother died because that was public, but that was weeks ago. People are just connecting dots, I think. I think they're connecting dots when it comes to that. But let's say it's true. Even so, why would you throw the baby out with the bathwater and just completely undo the fucking story you were telling?
I don't know.
And have the guy kicked out of the group? It still doesn't make any sense.
And he was a good fit in that group, too. So it's like, yeah, that I'm almost annoyed from that standpoint, too, because it's just like, Jesus Christ, that was a great spot for AR Fox. It worked. The thing with Swerve worked. It could have just been as simple as, I guess you didn't want to do the 2 beatdown. I guess when you're a sloppy shopper, bad booking, like you said, I guess you can't do 2 my partner has been destroyed and now can no longer attend the show in England angles in the span of an hour, but maybe don't have one of those, or maybe only have one of those, or maybe have none of those is a possibility.
Well, here's where the plot thickens, sir. I don't know if you saw this yet. Meltzer and Alvarez did some audio today. You know, they're all on the fucked up clock. It came out right before our show. Apparently, AR Fox is in the doghouse because he's not allowed to go to the UK. And he either didn't inform them or they didn't know. That was the implication on the audio.
Okay.
But that's sloppy shop shit. You cannot book a match.
I want to find out. I got to find out for sure a month out. I need to know from my entire talent roster. I don't care if I'm booking you for Wembley or not. 3 months ago, 4 months ago, 5 months ago. Let me see your passport. Are you cleared? Tell your office, make sure everybody's cleared. And whoever we use, we use. Whoever we don't use is fine. But like everybody, we need to know that everybody's cleared to come. We cannot find out a week before.
How do you not know this until a few days before the show?
Right.
It's unacceptable.
I check my passport like once every couple of months just to make sure it's not even close to expiring. And it's not. It's going to expire in 2026.
Don't they have office people who handle all this and know everything?
I thought so.
They don't, apparently. So either way, again.
But yeah, that's not on him. We're saying that's on this guy to tell you that he can go there or not. Like,
I don't care who it's on. It's sloppy shop.
Right.
And again, it's choose your adventure. It's either terrible booking to get out of an unfortunate situation of he can't go because of a funeral. It's still bad booking to just throw the baby out with the bathwater and undo the whole story. Or option B, you didn't know who's allowed to go over there until a week before the show. And you booked a match without making sure that everybody booked in the match can go. And I'm sorry, I don't think that this was the booking. Maybe here's another.
If this is the plan,
argument.
It's a bad plan.
If it was a plan, it's a bad plan. If the plan was, okay, well, eventually Swerve's going to kick him out anyway, but since we're mad at him, we're just going to do it now. Well, the whole idea was they booked this match. So they either booked a match they knew they weren't going to do, or they booked a match that they're now not doing. Rich, there's no good path.
You book this shit. It's fake. It's a work. Book whatever you want to book. You don't have to.
No matter what you can come up with to try to defend this, it's a fucking mess.
Yeah, it is.
And if Christian wasn't so good at making fun of people's dead fathers, you wouldn't have escaped it with this little wrath. But I'm not letting you off the hook. Because Christian knows how to cut a promo. This is a disaster. Same thing with the Phoenix thing. Now you're starting to hear people say, oh, well, this was the plan all along. They knew Phoenix couldn't go. And they knew they were going to do an angle. Hold on a second. They advertised a 6-on-6 match. They had a fucking graphic on TV with 6 men on one side and 3 men on the other side with 3 little silhouettes behind them. 3 mystery men. Graphic on TV. They advertised 6 versus 6. Now I have people telling me, oh, well, it makes sense because Blackpool Combat Club could only get 2 guys, so they decided to take a guy out on the other team to make it 5-on-5. That was never established. You're doing headcanon. That's headcanon. I shouldn't have to do headcanon as a fan to make this shit make sense, is my point.
Yeah, what? That was never established. That Blackpool Combat Club.
When did John Moxley cut a promo saying that? When, before or after the attack? Never. Never. So, again, choose your adventure. It's either a sloppy shop or it's poor booking. It's one or the other. Neither option is good. And there's just a whole lot of this lately in this company. Why would the Blackpool Combat Club, why would they not bring a sixth man? They were challenged to a 6-on-6 match, and they're the heels. Why would they not bring a sixth man? I would be totally cool if it was 6-on-5. It makes sense. They took a guy out. They have an advantage now. That's what heels do.
Mm-hmm.
That would be great.
Yeah, and these guys would do it in a vicious way like they did with the fucking crowbar and beating him down or whatever. Yeah. And Eddie could be mad and say, God damn it, we don't have enough time, can we get another guy? And them go, no, you agreed. 6 versus 6, you agreed. Phoenix can't come. He's out. Well, too bad. You got 5, we got 6. Let's go this Sunday, Wembley.
So
it's good heat.
Example,
that's good heat.
That's good heat. That example, the Jungle Hook example, the Golden Vampire example, all these examples I'm giving you are just very big. I don't think I'm a booking genius, Rich. These are all very basic, time-tested ideas that work. They have 97 people in that room. None of them bring these things up. To get out of these jams. To maybe make a card ahead of time and then build to it. Oh, they did that, and then they ripped it up. My bad. Then they decided, well, we need to juice this thing up. We're going to do Young Bucks FTR, and then the rest of the card fell apart. So, my apologies. They did have a card planned. We're just not going to see that card. It's a fucking mess. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's going to fucking rock and be one of the
it's going to be an incredible show.
So,
these pay-per-views always rule. And again, they'll be bailed out by their incredible talent roster. One of the greatest talent rosters ever assembled, and they're going to go out there and have a kick-ass match a kick-ass show in front of a gigantic crowd that's going to make a ton of noise and be really happy. But it definitely feels like at some point this is going to be untenable, that you can't just keep doing this, but I don't know, maybe they can. Maybe this is what this company is going to be. It's just fucking chaotic, and then the pay-per-views are going to come and they're going to be great. So I don't know. At some point, It feels like that's got to expire at some point, but I don't know.
All right, well, you know my feeling. Too many cooks, but that's a conversation for another day that we've already had here a million times. Let's go over the card.
Probably not going to change either anytime soon. Let's start with the AEW World Title match here. MJF versus Adam Cole. I guess we can we'll double book this here. We'll do the 0 Hour, of course. I think we talked about it last week. A very cool concept here, I think, to do the ROH World Tag Team Title match, Aussie Open versus Adam Cole and MJF on the 0 Hour. Now, I think that's a really, really good idea from a business standpoint, too, because anybody who's not watching the show that maybe watches Dynamite regularly or watches Collision or casually watches AEW or whatever, the hope is that they tune in, they're interested in this Adam Cole and MJF story, they tune into the 0 Hour, and then they see this show in front of 80,000 people and 90,000, however many people are going to be there, and go, fuck, I got to order this damn show, and they order the show. This I think is a great idea to put. Not only does it work in the story, it works for the angle, it works for everything, but also, from a business standpoint, there's ways to get people to buy pay-per-view shows on a pre-show, and then there's this. I mean, this is the ultimate cheat code possibly for getting people to buy this show if you're just on the fence and not quite sure that you're going to see that atmosphere and see this. You're going to say, shit, how can I miss this show? I can't miss this show. I got to watch this. So I'm excited to watch it. I think it's going to be a really, really smart booking to put it on the 0 Hour. As well. And we talked about it a little bit last week of who knows, tons of different scenarios you could play out here. They could just win the titles. They could have miscommunication. You could straight up just have one of the guys turn on the other guy at this point. I don't know. It could go a multitude of different ways, and I don't know which one I can predict. And I think that with that being said, now that we're here with the MJF Adam Cole thing, I liked the promos on Dynamite. I liked a lot of the MJF Adam Cole stuff. I liked. The problem was the stuff that I disliked, the owie, the Chinese food is too hot, and the trampoline park were so bad and so awful that it makes me think that I hated this build. But when you actually get down to it, this build is pretty good, and I enjoy it. I just wish we could have not done the pre-tapes. And you didn't need everything else was perfectly fine without those pre-tapes. And I'm looking forward to it because I don't know which way it's going to go. Like I said, in that 0 Hour, they could win the tag team titles. MJF could turn on Cole. Cole could turn on MJF. Come to the main event, I have no idea. Adam Cole could win the title. MJF could, cheat to win the title. Adam Cole could cheat to win the title. Roderick Strong can cheat. Roderick Strong can turn on Cole. Roderick Strong can be right and Cole and Roderick Strong turn on MJF? I don't know. And that's kind of fun and kind of interesting. So they've done a good job with it. We got here and they've done a good job. And I'm interested in this story now when at different points of this, I was groaning because we were doing just the worst fucking pre-tapes ever. But we're here. And when you really boil it down, this has been a very, very good story.
Yeah, I guess so. I'm not really into it. They lost me with all the goofiness and, I understand what they're doing with the pre-show match. I think it's a good idea. A lot of people are ripping that Aussie Open tag, but it's going to set the stage for what happens later in the show.
Right, and it's going to be it's a big match that people are going to want to watch. People are going to want to watch that for free and watch it on YouTube and stuff. No, it's a
great idea.
It's a great idea.
It's all a great idea. And the problem is MJF is going to hit that kangaroo kick, and 90,000 people are going to lose their minds, and my soul is just going to leave my body. It's disgusting. It's gross. But it is what it is, I guess. But and then you got Jack Perry versus Hook too, which obviously has been built. I can't complain about them doing that match here, despite the fact that I think the team should have been together longer to build more of an emotional investment in the split. But I'm glad they're doing the match because a lot of times they don't even do the match anymore in this company, which is baffling and I don't understand. But anyway.
So you got that, of course. So we'll see what ends up happening there. I mean, prediction-wise, I don't know if I have a good prediction on who's. What do the betting lines say for Cole and MJF?
You want the betting lines? Okay. Yeah. Aussie Open is minus 250.
Okay.
I think they're winning the match too. So MJF and Adam Cole are plus 180, and there are no odds on Hook versus the Jungle Boy.
Right. Oh, by the way, Hook and Jungle Boy is now on the pre-show. So cool.
Didn't I just say that?
Yeah, no, I'm just reiterating just how weird it is that they just kind of threw this match on the pre-show.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I guess so.
It should be a pretty. It feels like a bigger match, but well, whatever. Just it is what it is. All right, and then as far as the main event, MJF and Cole, what are the odds for that one? Because I don't. I feel like MJF's probably going to win still,
take a stab at him.
I'd say MJF is probably a favorite. I would say minus 300 or so, somewhere in that range.
You're close. You're close. He's 4-1. He's minus 400.
Okay, all right. That's pretty good.
1-4 rather.
Yeah.
Cole is 3-1. He's plus 300. So you were right. You were close. You were in the neighborhood.
Yeah, that feels about right to me.
I wouldn't bet that with your money. I have no interest. I don't know. I think MJF comes out of here with it, but.
That's pretty unpredictable. Oh no, I'm not betting that one either. That one, like I said, I could just as easily see Adam Cole hitting that Panama Sun or Roderick Strong coming out and clocking MJF with a something, and then Cole hitting that Panama Sunrise and winning that title. I could absolutely see that happening too. So I'm definitely not betting that one. FTR versus the Young Bucks, AEW World Tag Team Title match. I'm glad this match is happening because it's going to be good. I just don't really know why it's happening. But and the promos didn't quite help me on Dynamite this week either. So,
well, the sit down promo was horrendous. That sucked. I don't know how they didn't reshoot that.
Yeah. So what am I supposed to gather out of that?
I don't know. It was really bad. But look, they might have the match of the year.
Oh, it's going to be fucking incredible. Yeah, of course.
In front of that crowd. They had to wrestle the first part of their feud in the pandemic era. They tried to hold off until fans came back.
Yeah.
They couldn't hold off any longer. They're wrestling in front of 90,000 people in the rubber match. Those four guys are going to be gunning to have the match of the year. That match is going to be spectacular. I don't have any doubt about it. I don't even care who wins. The match is going to be spectacular.
Oh, it's going to work for that crowd too. It's just it's going to be phenomenal.
FTR is plus 120. The Bucks are minus 160.
Sure. It sounds fine.
If I had to bet that match, I'm taking the plus side of the money because it's a coin flip match.
I think I would probably take FTR if I was a betting man.
I'm just taking whoever has the plus side of the money.
Right.
I'm going to go for value in a situation like that.
The tradition continues. AEW Women's World Title 4-way match. Hikaru Shida, Saraya, Toni Storm, and Dr. Britt Baker, DMD.
I think they're going to add Chris Statlander versus Ruby Soho at some point.
Okay.
This weekend.
Main show, 0 hour. What do you think?
I don't have any inside information. I just think that match is going to get added to this show in some form because, look, Ruby's going to be there. She's going to be cornering Saraya and Tony, right? So, and it would be a second women's match. There's only one women's match on the show. There's only 2 matches on the pre-show. I think they're going to add Statlander versus Ruby Soho. That's just a prediction.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
But, she beat Sky Blue last night after saying she wanted to get a win under her belt and then go after Statlander, so it all makes sense. The 4-way, I don't know who's going to win. I don't care who cares. I don't have any interest whatsoever in this.
How could you? What have they done to give you interest in this match? What have they done, Joe Sixpack? You're not Joe Lanza, you're Joe Sixpack, watching at home, watching Dynamite every single week. What reason have they given you to be interested in this match in any way, shape, or form? Why would you care?
I guess I would like Tony Storm to win because she was a really good champion.
Sure. But why does Joe Sixpack want to watch this match?
I don't know. I don't know.
Just for the tradition, I guess. The tradition continues. He's a part of history.
Yes. The grand tradition. 4-way women's matches. Sheeta is a heavy favorite. She's even money. Saraya is plus 125. So they think that they're going to go with the old hometown.
Can you imagine? I don't think she's going to get a hometown welcome there. We'll see.
Britt's plus 400 and Tony Storm is plus 600.
Ooh, I like that Tony bet. I don't hate that Tony bet. We'll see. Coffin tag team match. Christian Cage and Swerve Strickland versus Darby and Sting.
All right, that's been taken off the board because the match changed. So I don't have odds for you. But, it's a coffin match, and Sting and Darby are going to win. And I don't know. I guess
how many times is Christian going to get buried in a coffin? He hasn't already been buried in a coffin in this company.
Yeah, he got buried alive.
Yeah.
Darby.
I guess he got. Yeah, I guess he was buried alive, not in a coffin. So I guess it's different. But
Darby's going to wrestle the dinosaur on All Out, right?
Yeah, sure.
No, that's a match for All Out, right?
Yes, yeah.
So
it could change, Joe. I know you're asking me. It's not like the precedent is that I don't know because it could change. You're right that it's been announced and booked and on the boards, but it could definitely change. We're 2 weeks out, baby. I don't know. Yeah. You tell me what's on the show. Bullet Club Gold, Jay White and Juice Robinson, as along with Konosuke Takeshita versus the Golden Elite, Adam Page, Kenny, and Kota Ibushi.
Yeah, it should be really good.
It will be a great match. I don't know why I'm watching it, but it's going to be a great match.
Sure seems like Juice is there to eat a pin.
Oh, yeah. Oh, God, yes. And then we'll get to
look, they're pretty cheap. Minus 300. It's pretty cheap.
You think we get Takeshita and Omega at All Out?
I think so.
Okay,
we'll
good.
See.
I'll be there, so I like that.
I mean, it seems to be where they're going here, right? I mean,
sure.
Can you hold off till another pay-per-view?
No, probably not anymore. But
yeah.
Stadium Stampede 5 versus 5, as we all knew it was going to be. Best friends Chuck Taylor and Trent Beretta, Eddie Kingston, Orange Cassidy, and Penta versus the Blackpool Combat Club, Claudio, Moxley, Yuta, as well as the returning Mike Santana and Ortiz.
Yeah, once again, this is not on the board due to the changes. This has been taken off the board. The integrity of the gambling community.
They cannot stand these last-minute changes, yeah.
Yeah, they're annoyed, too. Yeah, I don't know. Look, people are going to love this. I don't know how this is going to work in a building of that size. I don't know how you're going to be able to catch all the action. Busy night for the director. But, these matches don't do as much for me as they do for other people, and I'm not looking forward to it. I have to be honest. I'm not looking forward to this at all.
I'm an Anarchy in the Arena guy. I'm not a Stadium Stampede guy, but we'll see. I can maybe adjust here.
I think it's going to be an Anarchy in the Arena, but they're just calling it because they're in a stadium.
Right. I agree. I think you're probably right. But
I am hoping they will pre-tape something goofy and make 90,000 people watch That's what I'm hoping they do.
Watch them fighting in, the arena the night before or something. Yeah, that'd be good.
Yeah, that's what I hope they do, and it gets booed out of the building. But
show a pre-tape. Yeah, I don't know.
It's going to be I think they're going to brawl around. It's going to be a no DQ building brawl, walk and brawl. Probably some wild spots that they have planned or whatnot.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll be. I think I'll like it better than you when it's all said and done.
You will. It'll be crowd pleasing. People will love it, and I will be grumpy.
You'll be grumpy, and everybody will say that you're no fun Lanza.
Yeah.
So,
Rich, I just want to watch people wrestle. You know what I mean? I don't know. I'd rather they just do a 5-on-5 tag team match. Australian rules. Hold the tag rope, make the tag. Side headlock takeovers. You know.
Could be a lot of
happy
heat.
With
you
that.
get a lot of heat in those types of matches. We saw it in Japan. Always does it.
That's right.
Old.
I don't need all these shenanigans. What's next?
Match that I think FTR and Young Bucks is my most anticipated match of the night, but this one's probably number 2. Chris Jericho versus Will Ospreay. I thought the promos last night were exceptional. I don't know what you thought of them. I thought both guys were great. I thought Will, speaking from the heart, talking about how he's got to get money. He's worried about money at this point. He's worried about paying bills, paying for his child. I've taken on a stepson. I've taken on a partner. I'm looking at my career. I'm doing all these things. I'm doing it for money, and I got 6 months till my contract's done, and I'm hoping that I have Chris Jericho, Kenny Omega, and Kazuchika Okada on my hit list. I will beat you all. And I'm going to go into the contract season with that on my back, and me being one of the greatest wrestlers in the world, and I need this for the money, so don't tell me what I'm doing this for, type of thing. I loved Will's promo. Great stuff. Speaking from the heart. And Chris Jericho right back at him saying, hey, I told you, I talked to you many, many years ago and told you to slow down so you could stay in this business and stay alive. And I'm at the mountaintop, and you're trying to get to my mountaintop, and you're not there yet, pal. So it's just, great stuff out of Jericho. Great stuff out of Ospreay. And I'm fascinated by this match. I mean, the build to it has been a little wonky. It's been a little strange, the Callis Jericho stuff, which speaks to, we didn't even bring that up. And I don't know what you think about the Callis Jericho story. I know we've never talked about it, but that was another one too that felt like it was going in a direction, then it went in this direction, and then it you could have, I don't know, it just felt like we were spending 5 weeks teasing Jericho going with Callis, and then we spent 2 minutes with him with Callis, and then 10 seconds later he's feuding with Callis again. I don't know, I just was like, I feel like you could have done a little more with that, but regardless, whatever. I'm really looking forward to this match because I want to see Will in there with a guy like Jericho. I want to see if Jericho can get to Will's level at this point in terms of where Will wrestles in 2023, which is he's no doubt the best wrestler in the world at this point. Will he adapt to Jericho's game? Will Jericho adapt to his game? Will they meet in the middle? These are two tremendous pro wrestlers. I'm sure they're going to find a way to meet in the middle. I'm just fascinated how it's going to all work and how it's going to look and how it's going to feel. But man, I think it's going to be a spectacular match. I'm not betting against Will Ospreay in 2023, and I'm not betting against Chris Jericho in a big spot either.
Yeah, no, I agree. I thought the contract signing, both guys were fantastic. I talked about it behind the paywall on the TV review, and I wish Will Ospreay had a match where he can go out there and have a match of the year caliber match, but maybe he'll drag Chris Jericho to one. Now the intrigue for me is, can he drag Chris Jericho to one? Because the story aspect to me here is secondary. That's whatever. I'm curious, and can Chris Jericho step up and have a great match with the best wrestler in the world? We'll see.
Yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm just fascinated by how this all kind of comes together. But yeah, we'll see. Real AEW World. I can't believe we're doing a real title thing. Ah, Jesus Christ! CM Punk versus Samoa Joe defending the quote unquote real AEW World title.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of this real world title thing.
Especially when one party doesn't acknowledge it at all. So
yeah, it's like from the inside they're saying, well, this is Collision's title. I think that's just it's a fake title.
If we're doing Collision titles, then I'm fucking forget it, man. Then
that's such a mistake, and it's I know it's not officially a Collision title and it's really just CM Punk's thing, but it's essentially basically the interim title is back. It's the guy who didn't lose it in the ring, and he's running around with a version of the title too. I don't know. I don't think it really adds anything. I'm not a fan of it at all. And I think it could easily is the kind of thing that could spiral out of control. I don't need a whole set of Collision titles. I really don't. But yeah, it's Samoa Joe. It's CM Punk. Poor Ricky Starks is really getting screwed here. I didn't talk about it before, but here's the other thing. If Ricky Starks is doing the I'm suspended and I have a manager's license deal, then wouldn't the logical thing be to have Ricky Starks manage Samoa Joe in this match, cost CM Punk the bout, and then continue the feud that way? But, I mean, unless they're going to do that as a surprise, and I have no indication that Ricky Starks is going to be in London, I mean, then what the hell's the point of Ricky Starks being a manager then? The natural thing to do is to come out with Samoa Joe and fucking manage him and cost Punk the match. And then a week later at All Out, you do Punk versus Ricky Starks in a strap match, or the loser gets 10 lashes or something like that. With this story with the whipping and the belt and everything. Right? Am I crazy here?
Nah, you're asking too much in this company right now. We can't get there. So,
am I reinventing the wheel? Is what I'm saying revolutionary?
No, but
well, what the fuck are they doing then?
I don't know.
Why isn't Ricky Starks managing Samoa Joe in Wembley? Costing Punk the match, and then Punk says, Ricky Starks, I had enough of your shit. I've had enough of you whipping my friend Ricky Steamboat. We're having a strap match, or the loser takes 10 lashes or whatever. Something having to do with the belt. At All Out in Chicago.
We'll do this match, and then they'll come back, and then the week between All Out and All In, or All In and All Out, they'll do some angle, and then they'll build to the match. Yeah.
But they need to have some kind of match incorporating that
I'm sure they'll build it in the hour of Collision that they talk about it. Right? I mean, the right thing to do is have Ricky Starks come out through the crowd, run in and cost Punk the match or whatever. But yeah, I don't know. You believe they're going to do that?
The right thing to do is have him manage.
Well, because he does have the manager's license. You're right. They did the whole manager's.
Why else did they do the manager?
I always forget the manager's license thing. Joe, I don't know why they did the manager's license thing, because they didn't want to take the guy off TV, but they did the suspended thing. I don't know. I don't know.
What the fuck was the point of it? To come out and manage Big Bill one week against a jobber?
Ricardo brings up a good point in the Noto chat room. Samoa Joe doesn't seem like the guy that would want a manager either. Nobody should manage Samoa Joe, right?
Is Samoa Joe the booker? I'm confused.
Well,
no, but I get what he's saying. Like, Samoa Joe is not the
if Ricky Starks said, "I'm going to come out and help you in your match with Punk," Samoa Joe would go, "Get the fuck out of here! Fuck you! I don't want you. Yeah, get out of here."
Oh, if the guy's going to help him win the fake title, though.
Yeah, but he's a fighter. Samoa Joe's a prize fighter. He's not going to have somebody help him win the title.
All right, well then why? Okay, then why is Ricky Starks?
I don't know. Stop yelling at me. I don't know.
None of this makes sense.
No, it does not. The House of Black.
Ricky Starks needs to come to ringside. All right, let's say you don't. Joe wouldn't want that. He needs to come to ringside with and the excuse he has is that he has a manager's license.
Right.
He has to cost. He should be costing CM Punk the match, and then CM Punk should be challenging him to a strap match, and then CM Punk should be beating him in Chicago and whipping him with the fucking belt to blow off the feud. Am I the one on crazy pills?
Yeah, I think you are. Yeah, you're trying to add logic to the AEW booking right now, and that's I think it's a losing battle, unfortunately, right now. So this was the summer. Remember we talked about the summer where they were going to put it all together?
Oh my God, the show's going to be great.
Yeah.
Like, I mean that. The show's going to be
it's going to be phenomenal. Yeah, we have a House of Black. One more match, by the way. House of Black, Brody King, Buddy Matthews, Malachi Black versus the Acclaimed, Bowens, Caster, Billy Gunn. Badass Billy Gunn.
Punk is minus 800, by the way.
Minus 800. Okay. All right.
I don't have odds on the Billy Gunn deal.
I might throw a few units on the my man Joe.
I think they should have done the Billy Gunn thing at All Out, not All In. I think you're burning prime real estate in that magical atmosphere on a guy that's 55 years old. I don't mind the story. It's not for me. I don't care about it, but I don't mind that they're doing it. I think it would be better suited for All Out than All In, or better suited for a TV match or something.
Yeah, I get it. I guess it depends how I get it. I really do. If it's his official send off or whatever, and this is how you're going to let him go or whatever, I guess it's a cool atmosphere. Like you're saying, it's a lot of work for a guy that's you're never going to do anything more with, and the rub isn't going to. Well, there was a time where the rub was going to the Acclaim, but now it's going to just feel like it's a badass Billy Gunn retirement match, and the Acclaimed are just along for the ride type of thing. Which
he's going to be Mr. Ass Rich now.
Yeah.
They're getting all the trademarks. So, that was a rumor going around last week. They were trying to get the Ass Man song.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And last night, it appears as though they did, because last night he said that Daddy Ass isn't allowed in the UK, but Mr. Ass is. So the backstory behind
I think he said
that
badass.
is
I think he said a badass.
badass Billy Gunn. My bad. Yeah. One of the WWE trademarks is the point. Yeah, he did say badass Billy Gunn. And I know they were trying to get the music, and the backstory behind that was they've been negotiating with WWE for the music and the trademarks, I guess, but it was some kind of deal where there's some kind of Billy Gunn has some legal claim that he's willing to drop if they give them the rights to use this stuff or something. That's how we got here.
Okay. Yeah. He got, if you remember, he got fired in a weird way, because it was like he was a trainer or a producer.
I don't know
then he
specifics,
tested positive for steroids and they fired. So yeah, maybe he's got something on them and he's like, I'll let it go if you just.
The lawyers are working it out. And based on that promo, though, I think.
Man. I love all this work. So that,
yeah.
Ass man. Like, oh, I don't know if I need that, but I'm sure 90,000 people are going to go nuts for it, so whatever. Yeah. Fine. Who cares? Show's going to rock.
I mean, the acclaimed deserve a spot on the show. They're over as fuck. I don't know. Billy Gunn, really? He gets prime real estate.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys on that roster that busted their ass for
that
years.
Aren't on the show,
yeah.
And it's and are being featured on TV and aren't on the show. And there's only one women's match if you want to go down that road.
I do not. No, I do not want to go down that road.
No thanks. And we're giving prime real estate to Billy Gunn. I don't know. Whatever. I don't know.
Daryl, I'm an ass man.
I mean, that whole Jeff Jarrett crew, they've been doing good work and they've been getting over, and they're not on the show, and Ricky Starks isn't on the show, and Chris Statlander is a champion and she's not on the show. I don't know. Enjoy Ass Man, I guess.
Enjoy the song, but yeah, it's still gonna be great. I'm sure we're still gonna love it.
Enjoy that. I might get up and groove.
Yeah, Daryl. Yeah, you're gonna be. Yeah, it's gonna hit. And
I'm an ass man. I love to hug him. I love to squeeze him.
See, you're already getting to it.
I love to bite him. I love to fuck him. However.
I don't think fuck him was a part of the lyric. They're not far off though. Not far off the ass man lyrics.
I love to plug him. I love to lick him. I like to fuck him. Isn't that how it goes?
A little different. He says, I love to love him, kick him, shove him, stick him, flaunt him, watch him, pick him. Pick him's a weird one. Kick him. Pick him's a weird one. I guess maybe pick the good ones, but I don't know. The way it interprets is, he likes to.
We all pick our ass from time to time. I think.
I guess, yeah. He loves to do it. He wants the world to know.
Sometimes you got to get in there, dig one out. It happens. That's some preview for the biggest wrestling show of all time. I can tell you that.
Absolutely. Yeah, you're not gonna get that anywhere else. But yeah, we'll be going live immediately following the show. Instant Reaction Live at flagshippatreon.com, patreon.com/voices of wrestling, and voicesofwrestling.com/patreon. Again, immediately following the show. And again, if you are on Fight, make sure you order that on voicesofwrestling.com/fight if you're planning on ordering the show on Fight TV. So, Joe, we are just
about... You got to get the live instant. You got to get that $10 tier, because then All Out is the next week as well.
Right. You're going to get a lot. Yeah, you're going to get a lot of stuff for that $10 from us.
So you get the 2 live instant reactions within a week of each other. You got it. So just upgrade right now or subscribe right now.
Absolutely. Yeah, we got the 2 instant reactions. You're going to get a lot of other content as well. A lot of stuff going up right now. I just posted my new Sky's the Limit. You just posted a Thursday Dynamite reviews. You just did your July Notebook Roundup, the best matches of July. The match of the week that we've talked about a lot during the Terry Funk times. I have my AWF series about the early territory, 1994 territory of Paul Alperstein's American Wrestling Federation. Plenty of other stuff. I got some other retro series, hopefully getting ready to go. My Shockmaster audio documentary about the anniversary of the Shockmaster is up there as well. So plenty of stuff available for you. $10 tier unlocks all of it. All of our written content, all of our audio content, all of our live content. For $10 over at flagshippatreon.com. All right, so we are overtime.
Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Get up! Gone! Woo! Oh, baby. Nick Senzel back from AAA. I'm in a pennant race. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Rich.
A pennant race? Are you in a pennant race?
Yes. What do you mean?
I guess you're in a pennant
what a
race.
Huge homer in the top of the 8th.
Aren't you in 3rd place?
Woo! Season ends today. We're in the playoffs. What are you talking about?
Okay. All right.
And we're playing the team right on a half game behind us, Arizona.
Okay.
It's a huge series.
All right.
Listen, I understand you haven't had much excitement with your White
jealous.
Sox.
I'm just jealous. Shut up. All right.
But this is what it feels like in late August to be playing big games.
Interesting.
You know?
Yeah, watching your
Rich,
team
I
still.
haven't had much either, so you gotta, this is exciting. Jeez. Wow, that's a huge home run. Anyway, what were we talking about here?
The show that we're doing, the podcast, the flagship podcast that we're doing. We are over time, so I don't know what you want to do here. We can either bust through Rev Pro and the rest of All In Weekend and NWA 75 in 10 minutes, or I don't know. You want to go Overrun? Do we dust
Overrun.
off the Overrun? Okay. For people that have never done the Overrun before, we are going to take a brief break, maybe a minute or two, collect our thoughts, go to the bathroom. We will come back. If you're on the live, do not leave. You can just stick around. You are going to get the rest of the show on the Overrun. If you're listening on the free podcast feed, we are done here for tonight. We'll sign off. And then if you want the additional audio, which is going to be our all-in weekend preview, we're going to talk about the NWA 75. We're going to talk about the other shows going on during All In, including a Rev Pro 11th anniversary show. All that stuff is going to happen on the Overrun. It will be on the $5 tier on our Patreon. Flagship, patreon.com, patreon.com/voices of wrestling, or voicesofwrestling.com/Patreon. So again, if you're on the live feed, stick around. We'll be with you in a minute. If you're on the free feed, that's Joe. I'm Rich. We'll talk to you next time on the Flagship Podcast. Take care.
Hello there, everybody. It's me, Garrett Kidney, the co-host of You've Got to Be Kidding Me on the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network.
And I am Liam Jones, my full name, and I'm also a part of the Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network as a co-host for You've Got to Be Kidding Me.
We are a TNA history podcast that covers TNA 1 month at a time. We cover all the drama, all the matches, all the Vince Russo nonsense you could ever want in your life.
Have you heard of TNA? I bet you have, but would it be funnier if 2 people made jokes over it the whole time? Probably.
So if that sounds like fun to you, check it out on this very Voices of Wrestling Podcasting Network, and Liam will do bits and whatnot.
Hola, my name is Ricardo. I am the host of the Lucha Jovers podcast here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. We are a Spanish-speaking show dedicated to discussing and analyzing pro wrestling from all across the world. From AEW to CMLL, we talk about American wrestling, Japanese wrestling, and of course, Lucha Libre. If something big happened in the pro wrestling world, we will talk about it. So if you know Spanish or have a friend that knows Spanish or want to practice your Lucha Libre pronunciations, go listen to the Lucha Jovers podcast right here in the Voices of Wrestling Podcast Network. Nos vemos por ahí.